morning, everybody. My understanding is we had a request to have some appearances by Zoom for the victims from your office, Ms. Gordon?
That's correct. Victim B made that request. If she's not on the Zoom hearing, we don't believe she'll be joining if she's not there now.
Somebody is on the hearing,
Okay.
apparently. And I don't know, whoever the person is, can you confirm that you can hear us, please? Can you hear me, ma'am, sir? So-called victim D, and I got a yes. Okay, very good.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, and I'll rely, I'm not going to worry about Zoom from now on. If there's something that goes wrong with that person's connection, I'll rely on your office to let us know, okay?
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So there's a number of motions that we have today. And I don't know what the best way to handle the motions are. I don't know who's here to testify or what, if any, agreement there is amongst the parties about how we should handle, what order we should have the motions heard. Have the parties discussed that, Ms. Gordon or Mr. Jensen?
We have not discussed that, Judge, but I can tell the court that we have a witness here from Racine County for the cadaver dog motion, so that it would be our preference to hear that motion first. And we do have witnesses for the Miranda motion, but those are Waukesha County Sheriff's detectives that would be present anyway.
All right, so sounds like better to handle the dog motion first. Mr. Jensen, you agree with that?
I agree. We also have a witness here, Mr. Potter.
Okay, very good. Then let's do that first. So anything before we start, and how do you think this motion should go? Who's handling, Ms. Gordon, you or Ms. Opper?
Ms. Opper is handling the cadaver dog motion.
Okay, Ms. Opper?
Your Honor, thank you. Yes, good morning. We do have Investigator Willis present from the Racine County Sheriff's Department to provide testimony. The defense had filed a motion essentially challenging the testimony or asking this court to exclude the testimony of Investigator Willis. And in the moving papers, they relied on two theories. Primarily, they relied on a theory of hearsay, that the testimony by Detective Willis would be hearsay. We reject that argument, and there's some language in the motion by the defense referring to the dog testifying and things like that, which is obviously not the intention of the state of Wisconsin. Detective Willis would testify as to the training and experience of the dog and his observations of the dog's behavior during the search and the significance of the dog's behaviors during the search. So he's obviously subject to cross-examination. He'll be testifying about his own personal observations, so it's not a hearsay issue.
And it would be more akin to a Daubert issue as they proposed as well.
That was the second prong of their argument, was if the court didn't exclude the evidence on hearsay grounds, they requested a Daubert hearing.
All right, who's handling from the defense?
I will be.
All right, anything before we start, Mr. Jensen?
Well, should we argue the law concerning the hearsay objection before we get into the Daubert challenge, or should we do it all at the end?
We do it all at the end. Let's,
Okay.
I think this is more akin to a Daubert, but I'll hear arguments about hearsay and so on afterwards. Let's go. Let's have the state's witness then.
Okay, can we just clarify if there's any request for exclusion of witnesses?
Not for this, because I would like to have Mr. Potter hear the state's testimony.
All right, nobody's asking for exclusion of witnesses.
Okay, and for the sheriff's, for the Waukesha Sheriff's detectives, you're not requesting that?
No.
Okay, all right.
And then just one other preliminary comment, Your Honor, is that the defense did cite in their motion the Bucky decision, B-U-C-K-I, and we also would be relying on that case. That's at 393 with 2nd 434. It's a 2020 Court of Appeals decision.
Okay, all right.
Then with the court's permission, I would like to call Investigator Willis to the stand, please.
All right, sir, come on up to the witness stand to my right. Remain standing and raise your right hand once you get up there, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, have a seat, sir. State your first and last name, please.
My first name is Andrew and my last name is Willis, W-I-L-L-I-S.
All right, go ahead.
Sir, how are you currently employed?
I'm employed currently as a deputy for the Racine County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you worked in law enforcement?
12 years, 3 months.
What is your current duty or assignment with the Racine County Sheriff's Office?
My current assignment is Community Liaison Officer within the Training Division of the Racine County Sheriff's Office.
What are your day-to-day responsibilities?
I handle in-service trainings for all personnel at the Racine County Sheriff's Office, quarterly trainings, SWAT trainings. I generate lesson plans for those trainings. We also conduct security assessments for local businesses, schools, churches, etc. Those are my primary duties currently.
Okay, I'm going to put up or ask permission to put up for the witness exhibit number 2. And for the record,
Right, hang on. You have not marked it. Okay, you're gonna admit it as an exhibit, you're gonna propose it to be an exhibit, then tell me what it is, so, because we're gonna mark it with our numbers sequentially, right?
sure. This is the CV of Investigator Willis.
All right, is there a paper copy?
No, I only have digital copies. I'm sorry, I didn't know the court required paper copies. I'll get those right away.
So what do you have on, what do you have this on? Is this on a CD that you're gonna submit to the court?
A thumb drive.
Okay, that's fine. And what
Okay.
else is gonna be on that?
It'll be all the exhibits for this motion, for the whole day.
For
For
the
this
entirety
issue.
of the hearing today?
Yes. This issue, the Miranda issue, and anything else.
All right, 1 second. Okay, we'll, because you have everything on that flash drive, I'll use your numbers now, okay?
Okay.
So this is exhibit number 2?
2.
Okay, and then we'll, within the flash drive, we'll designate, okay, very good.
And just for the record, Your Honor, we have provided Attorney Jensen with a copy of the flash drive as
Okay,
well.
very good.
Okay, so, sir, could you please identify number 2 and we can scroll down here a little for you so you can see it?
Yes, that appears to be my CV.
Okay, and this is the document you created?
Correct. If you don't mind, can you just scroll up to the front page, the title page? And then the bottom of it? Yep,
Okay, so it was updated in September of 2022.
correct.
All right, do you believe this is an accurate representation of your professional experience?
I do.
Okay, I would move to admit number 2, please.
Any objection?
No,
2's admitted.
And then we'll just briefly go through this, please, if you could turn to page 2. There you go. So this is documenting your entire professional career, is that correct, sir?
Correct, up to September of 2022.
Okay, and this includes your education there on page 1
Yes,
and your law enforcement experience with the Racine County Sheriff's Office.
correct, yes.
Okay, and you've had different roles or titles at the sheriff's office.
Correct.
Okay, page 3, please. You have worked in various capacities with the Racine County Sheriff's Department, different investigative duties and responsibilities,
Yes,
and that's all documented there?
correct.
Okay. Most notable for this is your documentation of your work as a K-9 handler, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And then you go on to document various trainings that you've been involved in.
Yes,
Page 4, please. You've attended numerous trainings on various topics throughout your law enforcement career.
that's correct.
Looks like you were a member of a SWAT team.
Correct.
Are you still?
I am.
Okay. Next page, please. Continue on with your training. A lot of it seems to be focused on traffic enforcement and your work with the SWAT team.
Correct, yep.
All right. Next page, please. Continue on with your training.
Yes.
And page 7, documenting different work experience on the bottom half of that page, sir.
Yes.
Okay. Whoops. So if we could focus in on your association with K9 Search Solutions as a independent handler.
Okay.
What is K9 Search Solutions, please?
Canine Search Solutions is an organization that was created by Karen Corcoran, who is a retired police officer from Madison. And she is, as well, is a certifier for the NNDDA, which is where Canine Raven is certified through. She also, when we have trainings, I'll link up with Karen to do proficiency training. And it is primarily an organization where current or retired law enforcement handlers only have affiliation, and we can work as a group in case we have to get deployed across the U.S.
Can you, Corcoran is C-O-R-C-O-R-A-N?
Correct, yes, sir.
All right.
And Karen is Carren?
Correct, yes.
Thank you.
So you've been associated with that organization since May of 2020, correct?
Yes,
And the focus of that organization is all search and rescue?
search and rescue. Other dogs have certain capabilities as well as trailing or tracking. I do not hold trailing or tracking. It would be just cadaver, human remains detection work for me.
Okay. How did you first get started in this type of work?
I work with an individual named Anthony Valenti. He is currently a sergeant on patrol at the Racine County Sheriff's Office and a canine handler. Outside of the Racine County Sheriff's Office, he trained working dogs in the Marine Corps. And outside of the Marine Corps and the Racine County Sheriff's Office, he was licensed to train various types of working dogs and like diabetic alert dogs, various working dogs. He had 3 dogs that were supposed to be multi-purpose canines that were going to go to law enforcement agencies. One of the 3 dogs was Raven. Raven didn't have the aggression like her 2 brothers that ended up going to law enforcement agencies. However, he still owned Raven and asked if I'd be interested in purchasing her. I agreed to purchase Raven with the intent of training her to be a cadaver dog or human remains detection dog, and that is when the process started.
Can you spell Valenti for us?
Valenti.
Thank you.
So am I understanding this is kind of a side business for Sergeant Valenti?
It was at the time, yes.
Okay. And although you know him through law enforcement channels, your involvement this is also sort of a side interest for you.
Correct.
The Racine County Sheriff's Office did not purchase Raven and assign her to you.
They did not know.
You purchased her personally.
I did.
Okay. And you've done all the training with her
I have,
personally?
yes.
Okay. I want to talk just a little bit about the science of human remains detection dogs, okay?
Okay,
You have received training in this field prior to your work with Raven, correct?
yes.
Can you describe for us the science behind the process of human remains detection dog?
Sure. So we as alive human beings have specific scents. If we went into a dark room, my canine would be able to come to me and recognize my specific odor. Once we are no longer alive, our scent, when our bodies start to decompose, it's all one unique odor. For example, if I was downed in a room no longer alive, Raven would not be able to determine myself from other deceased people in that room. Once a human is no longer alive, the decomposition of a body begins immediately. It is a specific odor, and that is the odor in which Raven is trained to alert to.
And that's known as volatile organic compounds?
Correct, yes.
And there have been studies in this area, correct?
Correct,
Published studies,
correct,
peer-reviewed studies,
yes.
and have they been able to identify these volatile organic compounds specific to human decomposition?
Yes. In addition to that, we do a lot of proof training to show that, for example, animal remains, different odor than what human remains put off, and we do elimination training and proof training to show, as you would see in training records, that is actually accurate live and in the field.
Is it widely accepted in this field that the odor given off by a decomposing human is different than any other organism,
Yes.
or person or object or animal, or it's
Yes.
distinct?
It's very distinct, yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not being so artful in my questions here.
That's okay.
And so when you're in the process of training a canine to detect the odor of human remains, how do you go about doing that?
It began with imprinting the odor to the canine. This process began utilizing extracted, unsterilized teeth collected from various dental offices. Once we gathered approximately 300 to 400 teeth, we stored those teeth in an airtight jar with makeup sponges. You began to put those makeup sponges in a sterilized wiffle ball, and you start playing fetch with the dog. Eventually, you remove the wiffle balls, and now it's the scent that the dog is fetching for, and you build the training on that. So then we would go into bone, organs, tissue, nerve, brain, skin, body fat or adipocere, and on from there.
So does a different sample, whether it's a tooth or tissue or bone, does that give off a different odor for the dog?
Not a different odor. It's still part, we're kind of extracting, in the early stages, you're extracting, if you can, certain parts of the human body, and if you can get them in different stages of decomposition, you're building a database for the dog to recognize odors to alert to. In a perfect scenario, you have an entire body down that this dog can alert to. It's not always like that. You have cases where there's maybe dismemberment. So we try to train in every which scenario that is possible, so we're building the canine's database, essentially.
This methodology of imprinting a dog, this is used not just specific to human remains detection, but really any working dog that's asked to, whether it's a drug detection or you had suggested maybe diabetics, something like that. The same method is used, correct?
The same method is used, yes.
And this is a tried and true method. This has been researched and peer reviewed.
Correct, yes.
The method of imprinting a dog.
Yes.
It's widely accepted in this field.
Yes.
Okay. So now I'm going to put up a different exhibit. We're going to talk more specific about Raven, and I'm going to ask for exhibit number 3, please. Do you recognize exhibit 3?
I do.
Can you identify it, please?
This would be K9 Raven's resume.
Is this a document that you created?
It is.
Okay. And do you believe it's a true and accurate representation of her professional experience?
I do.
Okay. We're going to go through this, please, together, and just if you could start at the top and explain to us how you acquired Raven, when she was born, her beginning training, things like that, please.
Sure. I purchased Raven in January 2019. In those first 3 months, it was basically forming a bond with the dog, very minimal in terms of discipline training, and we started the cadaver training in March, end of March of 2019, through the imprinting process, which I described earlier. She was first certified with the NNDDA, that's the National Narcotic Detector Dog Association, February 2nd, 2020. And the training continued on from there.
Okay. Her breed?
She is a Dutch Shepherd mixed with Belgian Malinois. Her father is, it's listed here, Big Boy Roy, he's over in Europe. And the mother, I believe, is stateside, not quite sure where.
Okay. The pedigree, you noted that the father won some type of award. Do you know what that was specific to?
It was specific, basically multi-purpose work. They put on competitions over in Europe, and he happened to be a winner one year over there. I just noted it. I learned through Anthony Valenti that Big Boy Roy was a seeked out male for breeding, working dogs.
Okay. And her date of birth?
September 15th, 2018.
Okay. And so you said when you first took ownership, you brought her into your home.
Correct, yes.
She lives with you and your family.
She does.
Okay. And initially you were just bonding with her and getting her used to you in your house, I'm assuming.
Yes.
And then you started working on the imprinting process, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Were you working alone during this time with her?
No. I was working with Karen and Anthony at the time. A lot of phone calls, a lot of visits to making sure we're on the right path with the imprinting process and that everything was going well.
Okay. If we could turn then to the next page. So we're going to go through her certification records. We don't really need to go in too deep on that, but she was originally certified in 2020 and then has been recertified every year that you sought certification, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Then on the bottom half of page 2, you document significant trainings, and here's where you talked about the imprinting, correct? That
Correct.
process?
Yes.
And you moved her through different sources of human remains during that imprinting process.
Yes.
Is that how it's supposed to be done?
It's more difficult in the cadaver work to get training aids than it would be for narcotics dogs. So the process of obtaining those training aids can be challenging. So there isn't a set standard in terms of what you need to start with first. You start with what you can obtain.
Okay.
And in this case, we started with the teeth because we were able to obtain a large amount of those with cooperation from the community. We were also able to obtain placentas from known people that had just given birth and were willing to donate their placentas. Placentas were a good training aid. It's large, similar to an organ, blood, tissue. It had a lot of things we were trying to cover for imprinting process. Once that was completed, we moved into obtaining adipose here, the liver, kidneys, skin still with body hair, muscle, tendon, bone, flesh, bone with still had flesh on it, and brain.
So just for curiosity, what is your source for these samples?
At that time, the source for samples was Science Care. It was out of, I believe, Arizona, where you could submit a request for these training aids. It was unprecedented at the time for them to sell these training aids for canine purposes. After having the support of the Racine County Sheriff's Office and going through documents to make sure that these are going to be stored for, cared, secured, they agreed to sell these parts for the purpose of canine training.
Okay.
Additionally, when we would come together as a community with Karen Corcoran through Canine Search Solutions, several canine handlers had their own training aids. So we would be able to share in training all the training aids that we had all collectively gathered.
But to be clear, all of the training aids were human remains, correct?
Of course, yes.
Okay. All right, then you go on to document some proficiency training that was completed.
Yes,
And I note you, I think you're using some initials here as to who the training was completed with. You use the initials CC and AV.
correct, yes.
What does that refer to, please?
Karen Corcoran and Anthony Valenti.
Okay. What is proficiency training?
So proficiency training is training that is being overseen by Karen and Anthony to make sure that the process, or that we are progressing in the training. So March 2020, still early on in Raven's working career, they're making sure that everything that she is doing as a canine is working properly, and me as a handler, I'm recognizing the behaviors I should be recognizing when Raven is working.
Okay. So you have to train the dog and you also have to train the handler, correct?
Correct, yes.
What kind of training are you going through?
So the training I'm going through is being able to recognize the behaviors that these dogs are doing, or specifically canine Raven, when there's indication or changes of behavior to decomposing human remains. I had to understand at that time that these dogs themselves are learning, building a database of what they can do, what their capabilities are, and my training is being able to recognize that. Karen and Anthony's experience as handlers at that time, and still now, is very large, so their expertise in this field was very helpful early on for me as a handler.
Are you, is this hands-on training with them? Are you reading manuals or literature, or how are you training yourself?
More hands-on training with them, and they would share any literature to be reviewed
Okay.
or recommend.
And you would read that and adopt it to your handling practice, correct?
Correct. So we would create trainings that at some point try to trick the canine. For instance, bury human remains. If we buried human remains, how deep should we bury them? Do we start at 1 foot? Okay, the canine can alert at 1 foot. Will it alert at 2 feet? Sorry. They would start at 1 foot, and then we would move to 2 feet. Once the canine would alert at 2 feet, and we move it to 3 feet. How much human remains are you using? Are you using 10 pounds? Are we using 1 pound? And then we would go on to other scenarios. Placing human remains in water. How deep in water? Is it moving water? Is the water stagnant? So for me as a handler, I'd have to realize in terms of water training, is there watershed? Meaning, is the elevation next to the water higher than where the water is at? And I have to analyze what the dog is doing in terms of changing behavior. Is the dog following watershed to stagnant water? Is it going up to the higher elevation? The canine is trained to alert at the largest source of human remains, and it's my job as a handler to recognize that.
Okay. And so during these proficiency trainings with the Ms. Corcoran and Mr. Valenti, they're assessing the performance of the canine and of you?
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right. The proficiency training began in March of 2020 after Canine Raven had already been certified by the NNDDA, correct?
I believe so. Yes, that is specifically because I couldn't gain affiliation or I couldn't work with Canine Search Solutions unless I had a certified dog.
Okay.
So these trainings we did these trainings, and the end goal is to gain certification.
Sure. And the NNDDA has a good reputation in the community?
They do, yes, it's a national organization.
And even though it's, the name suggests it's for narcotic dogs, do they certify other working dogs?
They do, including cadaver dogs.
Okay. And Ms. Corcoran owns and has owned several cadaver dogs herself?
Yes.
How about Mr. Valenti?
Cadaver dogs, he has not owned cadaver dogs. He has helped train them.
Okay. And he's had other dogs that were certified working dogs?
Many dogs, yes.
Many, okay. All right, we're going to go on to the next page, please. And you just continue with these significant trainings and proficiency trainings that you completed,
Yes.
correct? Okay. And then the document goes on to list a series of searches that Raven has participated in. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I think we can see 1 through 12 on this page, but I think at the bottom it goes all the way through 31 searches. Is that right?
At this time, when this document was, if you don't mind going down one more page, so I can, yes.
Okay. So that was, you completed this around the time that you did the work in this case for the Waukesha County Sheriff, correct?
I believe for the resume, it went slightly past.
Okay. Okay, so search 31 there's listed as occurring in February of 2024, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So as of February of 2024, she had been involved in 31 actual searches,
Correct, yes.
not training sessions, but actual searches.
That's correct.
Okay. And you document on this exhibit the different searches and where they were, or at whose request they were completed for, correct?
Yes, and then if there was any case numbers associated with those searches, they were added in there as well.
On the bottom of there, you have a designation for asterisk. A single asterisk means that validation or confirmation occurred.
Correct.
Can you explain that, please?
Any of the searches that were completed by Canine Raven, if there was confirmation during that search, it was indicated on the resume with an asterisk. Confirmation meaning if she did a search and located a body is there, it confirms her search. If she did a search and had an alert, perhaps maybe no body, but it was confirmed through evidence that a body was there, it got an asterisk for a confirmation. There has been other cases where suspects have confessed, and during the confession, confirmed Raven's search, an asterisk was added.
Okay, and Ms. Gussie, if you could please go back up to where the searches started. So I see search 2 was confirmed, search 5, 6, 7, 9, 12, is that correct on that
Correct.
page?
Correct, yep. If, did you want me to detail on them or just?
Yeah, if you know these details, sure.
Remember some of these, the Racine County one for search 2 was a Jane Doe case. Raven alerted to a crawl space in the house. I believe the FBI went back and sifted through the soot down there and located a tooth. The Rockford one was a house explosion. Raven alerted to the foundation, and one of the residents, their body had burned and their body fat had melted down the foundation or the inside wall.
Was
Sir-
that search 9?
That was search 9.
Okay,
Search 12, Mount Pleasant had a suicidal subject. He had a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head, 3/10 of a mile upwind. Raven alerted to a very large brush pile where the village residents dump like stuff like Christmas trees, grass, leaves, and that odor had pooled and gathered in the brush pile. In searching upwind, his body was found.
okay.
Search 15, Raven searched the Menominee Reservation and located the deceased female in that case on a frozen marsh. Search 18 was a house fire. The resident's vehicle was in the driveway. Neighbors did not know where she was. Raven alerted in the rubble pile in the kitchen, and her body was located once the rubble was pulled off. In that area, she was located down in the kitchen, deceased.
Next page, please. Okay. So there have been several occasions that you just outlined for us where Raven conducted a search, provided a formal alert in an area, and human remains were in fact found there.
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right, I'm going to move on now and discuss Raven's training.
Okay,
And you have provided to us some training documents, is that correct, sir?
that is correct.
All right, I'm going to first put up exhibit number 5, please. And ask you if you can identify that.
That appeared, yeah, that is Raven's training log, starting with August 29, 2021.
And is this a document that you created
It is, a portion of it.
and you maintain it?
I do,
Adding to it as more trainings are completed?
I do.
Okay. This is a portion of that training log from what period of time?
From August 2021 through September 22, I believe. Yes.
What's the relevance of that time period?
A year leading up to this case.
Okay. Do you believe this is an accurate representation of Raven's training log?
For this period, yes.
Yes, for this period. All right, I would move for admission in number 5, please.
Any objection?
No.
All right, 5's admitted. What about 3?
Yes, I would move 3 as well. Thank you, sir.
Any objection?
No.
3's admitted.
I'm going to ask you to put up number 7, please. And before she flipped over so quickly, it was a 45-page document, I think. Does that? Yeah, there you go. Do you recognize Exhibit 7?
I do.
And what is Exhibit 7, please?
Exhibit 7 should reflect any completed training exhibits from the previous, not to make it confusing. Was it Exhibit 6, I believe it was? 5.
Yeah.
So in Raven's training log, for any completed training where it notes,
Yeah, we're going to go back to 5 here.
okay.
Okay.
So, for example, August 29th, 2021, this training at the bottom, it'll say see dated exhibit and completed exhibits. And Exhibit 7, which was up, that would reflect that day.
Okay. The specifics.
Specific and
Okay.
notes, handwritten notes from that training.
Okay. So, Your Honor, what I'm going to propose with your permission is I have printed out, because you kind of need to be going back and forth between the two. I've printed out number 5 with a copy for the witness, the court, the defense, so that you can follow along on the paper, and then we'll be projecting Exhibit 7, if that's agreeable to the court.
Any problems with that from the defense?
No.
All right, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Gussie, please put up Exhibit 7, and these documents are all prepared by you, correct, sir?
Correct.
And they're meant to detail the search, the location, what was involved, things like that?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not going to ask you to read every one of these in great detail, but let's just start with August 29th of 2021. If you can just tell us kind of what these notes mean at the bottom and what was involved in this search.
Sure. So on the printed out training log, I note the day, the location of the training, the type of training. So for this training, it was a high hide, meaning elevated. It was in an open area, and there was a buried search. I note the time the training started and when it ended. I'll note the weather data as far as temperature, type of weather for that day, and wind speed and direction. I'll note in here the specimen or the training aids I used for that training. So in this case, I used a skull, a mandible, a bone with tissue, 4 bone bags, and 2 scent articles. The bone bags are teeth placed in pantyhose that are about the size of a racquetball, a little smaller than a tennis ball. And the scent articles are clothing items that I keep stored with the training aids. So the odor from the training aids is soaked into the scent article.
Again, meaning human remains.
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right. And what'd you do with all these items?
So there were, in this training, there were 4 hides. And when I say one search, the search is done. I place Raven into a sit. I give her the command to search for human remains, release her from her lead, and she's off working to find all 4 hides out there all in one go, one search. So it'll show on here what time the hides were placed as well. I placed them at 08. So we would refer to this as how much soak time did the training aids have. In this instance, it was rather quick. It wasn't a very long soak
Okay.
for those aids to be placed within the training area. And then upon a trained formal alert to those aids or the source, she was hand rewarded. So at the very bottom, if you see SP, that's the starting point, and it says I started at 9:15, so the soak time was 1 hour and 15 minutes in that training area. The search complete time is at 9:21, so she completed the entire search, finding all 4 hides in 6 minutes.
Why do you document that she's off lead? What's the significance of that?
So the training log and these training exhibits are for me to refer to and go back if I have questions in terms of any behavior that I see with the dog. I'll look at weather pattern, what types of training aids were used. Basically, it's a reference for me as a handler. And I make these notes so I can refer back. For instance, if I came out, hypothetically, if I went out on August 30th using the same exact training location, training area as you see in this photograph, and I placed a hide in the, let's say, the crane to the right, on the 30th, not the 29th, and she gives some sort of indication to that lumber pile in the back, I believe it's circled with the number 2, but I didn't place a hide there on the 30th, I can go back and see that I had a hide there the previous day,
Sorry.
that I
We
had
were
a
trying to
hide.
zoom in, but apparently we can't, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I can at least go back in my notes and understand that I had a hide there the previous day, so it would make sense why she's showing some sort of change of behavior in the same location.
I see. Okay, so let's look at page 2, please. And here's the results, right?
Yes,
Gave formal alerts to source at all 4 hides?
correct, yes. So I note on here, Raven located hide 1, licked it, pawed at it, grazed on grass, and searched the surrounding area to the north for about 30 seconds before returning to alert. That's a behavior that I note that she displays, for example, licking at, pawing at, grazing on the grass, and then searching surrounding area. She's eliminating the area around it in terms of she's ensuring that what she's alerting to is the strongest source in that area. This is the behavior that I note, and as I go along, I can see as the behavior continues, this is a pattern she's forming while she works.
Okay. All right, next page, please. This is just you documenting what objects you had placed or training aids you had placed?
Correct.
And where? Okay.
Yes.
Next page. Next page. Next page. Okay. All right. Next one on Exhibit 5 is a search from September 9th of 2021, and we're displaying that now on Exhibit 7 for everyone digitally.
Okay.
Can you walk us through this one, please?
So this training was conducted on Thursday, September 9th, 2021. The location was Fort Sheridan, Illinois. The training was 3-hour training from 9:30 in the morning to 12:30 in the afternoon. I note the weather conditions. It's an open area search. I used 1 hide, 1 search. Raven again off lead. And this, instead of a hand reward, it's a BSD reward. BSD stands for Behavior Shaping Device. And this is a device that once Raven gives a trained formal alert to source, I don't have to provide her with a hand reward. I can press a button on a remote and her ball is shot out from a hidden location at the source. The specimen used was a skull, 4 bone bags, bone with tissue, and skin. It says here I placed it in a 50-gallon metal trash can without a lid. The trash can was 2/3 full with garbage and 5 inches of water in the bottom. I've placed notes like that. It shows that people ask if these dogs alert to garbage. It just shows in the notes that there's garbage in there. So maybe on another training, I don't place the source in a garbage can with garbage. I separate the source, but place a garbage can with garbage in there in the training area and watch her behavior.
Okay. Next page, please.
I just put notes on here for myself in terms when I say excellent search, meaning her focus during the search, her speed of the search, that she alerted that there was no change of behavior alert anywhere else, which is a good thing, obviously, because there was no other sources. I'll note if there's any wildlife in the area or wildlife feces in the area, if there's other people present in the area, and I put no grazing. Just every dog's got a quirk. When it gets warmer out, Raven will graze on grass at times. So I just wrote that in there as well.
Okay. Can we talk a little bit about the difference between a change in behavior and a formal alert?
Yes. So a change in behavior is for Raven specifically. If Raven is doing a search, she's on a path or I call it serpentining through a search area, and she has a sudden change of direction. Her sniffing increases. She starts hyper sniffing, or she's pawing at a location. This is not a trained formal alert, but it's a change of behavior to note during the search. I want to figure out why there's a change of behavior there. That is how Raven specifically changes her behavior.
Okay. And how is that different than a formal alert?
Trained formal alert is when Raven now is at source, is determined source of human remains. She is trained to sit and look at that source and stay until she is rewarded.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next page, please. According to Exhibit 5, there was another training on September 17th of 2021, correct?
Yes.
All right. First page for this search, we see a overview of the search area.
Correct.
Okay. It's a little hard to see. I don't know if you could see it on your screen, but if you could just kind of point out the relevant areas for us.
Sure. This is at Linwood Park in Caledonia, which is in Racine County, Wisconsin. The square with the triangle in the parking lot shows where I parked the vehicle when we got there. I note on this graphic the wind direction and wind speed, the date at the top, and the time from 1:15 p.m. to 2:30 p.m.
Okay. And what's the dashed line there?
Dash lines is, I'll write these on some of my exhibits to kind of show her movement during the search. And I believe, it's hard to see in the graphic, that the source was placed on the upper right corner in some taller fescue or vegetation.
Okay. Next page, please.
What I wanted to try and challenge her with in terms of this specific training is I wanted her to start upwind so the odor was not blowing into her face. So I wanted her to work a bit to locate the source. Again, it's off lead, it's open area search, water and buried. It's just a description of the type of search we were doing. It's a hand reward, one hide, one search. The weather data, and then the specimen that was used was skin, liver, muscle, 2 placentas, bone with tissue, and a skull. I note on here when it was thawed, because I would say for the majority of time they're stored frozen. And if I wanted to change the level of decomp on these training aids, I would pull them out, thaw them, and keep them thawed for an extended period of time. I'm simply noting here that the training started at 1:15, and the training aids were pulled at 6 a.m. that morning, and they were placed at 1:30 p.m.
Okay. And the results on this one?
The results were the search started at 2 o'clock p.m., so 30 minutes after the source was placed, and she alerted 5 minutes after starting. I noted that it was a fast-paced search, and I put minimal grazing because it was a warmer day, and just that she didn't do any grazing and she was pretty focused.
Does the pace of her search affect the results or the outcome?
Not necessarily. Younger dogs are known to be pretty quick searchers, especially of this breed. When you get a 5, 6, 7-year-old dog, it's nice because they kind of settle down. They get into a good pace, a consistent pace on their searches. She's at this age, at this time, she's always excited to work. She knew when she was going to work. So, for example, if I arrived here for training at, I believe the time was 1:15, and I'm getting her out to do the search, it started at, the hide was placed, so I arrived at 1:15. In that 15 minutes, I'm placing, in this training, I'm placing the source. she knows she's gonna work, she's excited to work. So when I get her out and I give her the command to freely search for human remains, she's just excited. It's just a note I put on there that it was faster paced because of the excitement.
Okay. But she did find it?
Yes.
Okay. All right, next is September 28 of 21.
Yes.
Can you walk us through this one, please?
Sure. This training was at the Racine County Sheriff's Office Patrol Station. I note the time was from 7 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. The type of search was an open area search. I had her do one search, and in the parentheses, it's blank. So, meaning I had her search an area where there was nothing there. This is so, what I don't want to see is a false positive.
Okay.
The other search is, had one hide, it was off lead, and the behavior shaping device was the reward for this one. The black marker on the left side of the page indicates this entire field is included in the search area. And I indicate where the hide was at and where we started from.
SP stands for,
The starting point.
okay.
And then I indicate, lastly, I indicate wind speed and wind direction.
Sure, okay. All right, in the blank area, what was the result there?
So the result for this was she was deployed into that area at 7 in the morning. She completed a good search of the area by 7:20 with no alerts or no changes of behavior. The reason I called it a good search in this instance is because she took 20 minutes to search an area that had no blanks, or I'm sorry, no training aids, so it was a blank. So that just indicates to me that on paper it looks like a pretty large area, but she covers a good amount of ground when she searches, and this just tells me she took 20 minutes to search a blank area without frustration and no false positives.
Okay. And the second area where there was a training aid?
So in the second area, there's a skull, skin, bone bags, bone with tissue, and a scent article. The hide was placed there after the blank area was completed. If I put that training aid in the area, she would show changes of behavior. So I had to wait till after the blank area was complete prior to putting the training aid in there. So the training aids were placed at 7:30. Again, I indicate the weather. We started the search at 11, so the training aids had 30 minutes of soak time. She alerted to the source 5 minutes after starting, and I noted no issues in terms of her behavior during that search.
All right. Thank you. Next search, October 5 of 21.
Yes.
Please describe.
So similarly, this is at the Racine County Sheriff's Office Patrol Station. I note the weather and the weather conditions at the top. This was from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Open area search and a scattered search. One hide was used and one search was conducted, again off lead, and just all of her searches are done off lead.
Why is that?
We began her training not using a lead. To be frank, it helps with the argument of cueing a dog to alert. And in terms of cadaver work, so long as she is in my view, which she is during searches, I don't have a reason to keep her on a lead during searching. So it was our plan from the start to train her to do searches off lead unless there was a safety issue at the time, meaning if we're searching a riverbank and the water is fast moving, maybe we would put her on a long lead.
Okay.
But
But other than that, it's her decision where to go next.
Correct, yes. So the lines in this graphic will show the search area, the location of the hide, parking area, and the starting point. It'll also show wind speed and direction. So for hide 1, the training aid was a bone with tissue, and I note that I placed it among similar appearing items as such as sticks, and I placed it at 8 a.m.
And the result?
We started the search at 9:53, so the training aid soaked for an hour and 53 minutes. I noted that it was a good search. She alerted to source. No alerts or changes in behavior at any other location during this search.
Okay. Next page.
I'm sorry, go back to that, please.
Yes.
So you said the starting point was at 9:53
a.m. Yes, sir.
a.m., and when was the alert? Does it indicate on there?
It does not indicate an alert time in the notes, and typically I wouldn't put an alert time always in the notes.
But you did in the other ones that you had?
Some I did and some I didn't, yes, sir.
Okay.
So this would be the image of the bone. So there's sticks in this area. I wanted to see if the appearance would throw her off, if she would show any interest in wooden sticks, which she did not.
Okay. All right, next page, please. 10/23/21 training.
Yes, so this training took place October 23rd. It's a Saturday, 2021, Fort Sheridan, Illinois, from 12 o'clock p.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. There is a typo on the graphic on the screen. It'll say vehicle search blind. It's actually a blank, which is noted in the training log.
Blank meaning there was no training aid actually put in place.
Meaning there was no human remains ever placed in the vehicle.
Okay.
I'm basically doing a vehicle search with nothing in it. And on here, with the vehicle search, we were working on a 10-foot lead. So the reason we did that is there are certain circumstances we may get called to or have been called to where the vehicle needs to be searched and it's along an active roadway or highway. Again, that presents a safety to the canine. We would have to utilize a lead in that case.
Understood, okay. The second search area?
The second search area was open area search or Rubble search. Would you mind going to the next page? I think it came with photographs.
Yeah.
Okay, if you mind just going back. So this indicates that it was an off-lead search, hand reward. The rubble, I'll note what the rubble consisted of. So garbage can, laundry cart, furniture, wood pallets, cardboard, dumpsters, plastic wrap. I note the weather data, and the specimen used here was a skull, bone with tissue, bone bags, skin, placenta, fat, liver, and that it was placed at 12 o'clock p.m.
All right, so first you had her search the vehicle,
Correct, yes.
and the result?
No false positive. I noted that it was a good sniff, meaning it was a detailed search of the vehicle. Total search time in that instance was less than 3 minutes, and I noted that there was no change of behavior and no alert.
Search two?
I noted that she had a quick change of behavior at the southwestern edge of the search area, and then pinpointed, hide to, and alerted, pinpointed to source or alert to source. She continued to search the remaining of the fringe area or outside area of the rubble and worked her way through the rubble where a change of behavior was exhibited near hide 1. And then she continued to work the area of hide 2 and gave a formal alert at source. I noted that there was no changes of behavior or alerts exhibited anywhere else.
Okay. Next page. That's just the overview of the area.
Yes.
Next page, please.
So this was the blind search area, so there was no training aids, nothing, no human remains located in that area,
Okay,
and that is the rubble pile.
and there were 2 training aids placed in this rubble pile.
Correct, yes. I wanted her to challenge her a bit to work through that pile to get to source.
Okay,
Just another photo of the rubble pile. Hide 1 was located inside there. I'm sorry, hide 2.
okay,
You can kind of see the containers at the bottom of the bin.
next page.
Hide 1 is located inside that Foot Locker,
Next page.
and that's hide 1.
Okay. All right. Next documented training was from October 31 of 21.
So this training Sunday, October 31st, 2021, from 10:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. This is located at Rybar Storage. It's a facility within Racine County in the village of Yorkville. Open area search, off lead, a hand reward. I note the weather conditions. The specimen is a liver, placenta, fat, skin, scent article, skull fragment, bone with tissue. Collectively was 5 pounds. So this training was conducted on the 31st. I note that I pulled all the specimen to be thawed on October 23rd. I note that the specimen here was placed at 10:30 a.m. on October 31st. I noted that all specimen was kept in an airtight container, placed in 5 mil thickness plastic bag, then zip tied closed, and then suspended within a 55-gallon plastic drum, and then placed into a wood line with brush. And I
Okay.
believe there's a photo showing that.
Yeah, let's go to the next page, please.
So these are all the items here.
All right, what'd you do with all this?
So that was placed inside the opening at the top
Next page.
of the 55-gallon drum, and then placed out into the wood line.
And I think there's one more picture of that. Yeah,
Just like that.
okay. And then if you could go back to the first page on the results.
So if you look within the red square of the image, that is the search area. The white square is where our vehicle was parked to start the search, and SP stands for the starting point of the search. And if you note the wind speed and direction, more of a crosswind from that starting point direct to where the source was at. We started at 1:02 p.m., so a little over, maybe a couple hours of soak time for that. I noted that she exhibited moderate grazing during the search and was very quick or fast-paced from the start. I noticed that wildlife activity in that area was high based on recent tracks and feces. And she located the source with a formal alert 7 minutes after the starting point or starting time.
Okay,
I noted that her change of behavior, she started to exhibit a change of behavior 15 to 20 feet northwest of where the hide was at. So that would be upwind. And I just noticed that she gave a formal alert to the source. I also noticed that that raven had defecated during the search. I'll note that for me, it's just a reminder that prior to these searches, to get the dog out, let it do its business, prior to searches. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's just a note I put in there for myself.
Okay,
And then I noticed that this search was witnessed by another investigator at the Racine County Sheriff's Office.
all right. Thank you. We can skip through those pictures. We already talked about those. The search on November 12th of 2021.
So this search is also at the Racine County Sheriff's Office Patrol Station on Friday, November 12th, from 12 o'clock p.m. to 2 o'clock p.m. And this, the boundary lines for the search area is outlined in yellow. I showed the wind speed and direction. It was one hide, off lead, open area search, and it was a hand reward. Believe I used the same training aids from the training at Rybar. Oops, sorry about that. On October 31st. So those same items that were thawed for the Rybar training on October 23rd were continued to go through the decomp and thawing process up until this training. So it was placed here for this training after the Rybar training.
Okay,
Double checking, yes. So after the training on October 31st at Rybar, I placed these training aids in this area on October 31st, and now we're doing this search November 12th.
and explain that, the hide info, how you prepare the training aid, please.
How I prepared the training aid for this search,
Yes,
the 55-gallon drum was removed from Rybar. It was still sealed with the tape at the top. All the items were still within the 55-gallon drum, and they were placed in an area where there were 6 other identical 55-gallon drums. So this is me trying to see if the dog is going to show any sort of interest, change of behavior, or alert on any of the drums that the specimen is not in.
okay. So the 6 others are empty,
Correct.
okay. And what happened?
I was pretty excited about this search. She pinpointed exactly the 55-gallon drum that had the human remains in it by physically touching it with her nose and giving a trained formal alert. So this one started at 12:50, and I noted she alerted at 12:54, so 4 minutes after starting.
Okay. Next page, please. December 10th, 2021 search.
So this is within a pole barn at the Racine County Sheriff's Office Patrol Station on Friday, December 10th, 2021, from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. So I note it's a building search and a residual search. I note the weather conditions. There were 2 hides, off lead and hand reward. The specimen was a skull fragment, 3 placentas, approximately 15 to 20 teeth, and the 55-gallon drum that was used on November 12th. I note in here that the drum previously used on November 12th, I emptied it on November 12th and kept it outside since November 12th.
So there were no training aids in that barrel any longer?
Correct. No human remains in the barrel during this training.
Okay,
So I placed now the empty barrel that had the human remains on November 12th. I placed that, and I believe that you had circled to the left there, hide 1.
all right,
And I made sure that there was another identical barrel, which is circled as like kind of a decoy I noted on here in the image.
sure. And then hide 2?
Hide 2 was the skull, placentas, teeth, each sealed in plastic containers and plastic bags, all hidden between rims.
Okay, yeah, I think we have a couple pictures. If you could go forward to the next page.
So this is just a better picture of hide 1. And then Hyde 2,
Kind of hard to see there.
okay, it's hard to see. I believe it's on the back wall.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay. And what happened on this training result?
I noted that she quickly showed a change of behavior at the UTV that's parked, then focused her search near Hyde 2, ultimately giving a train formal alert at source of Hyde 2. She continued to search along the west wall, and for reference, the west wall would be where the armored vehicle is parked on the left side of the photo.
Okay,
She came to the decoy blue barrel, the one that has not been used with human remains, sniffed it, and then continued on past it.
then on the exhibit, it's kind of cut off at the bottom there, but you know what it says?
Yeah, that she had continued her search and gave a train formal alert to Hyde 1.
Okay. Thank you. Next search, December 31, 2021.
So I believe this one's also noted as one of the proficiency trainings with Anthony Valenti.
Okay.
This training, sorry, go ahead.
And this was a blind search?
This is a blind search, meaning Anthony, I believe it was Anthony. Anthony placed the human remains or hid them unknown to me where they would be at for this training.
Okay.
This training started at 12 o'clock p.m. and went till 1:30 p.m. It's an open area marsh blind search. There was one hide, one search, it's off lead, and it was a hand reward. I note the weather conditions. The specimen was approximately 5 pounds, which included 3 placentas, skull fragment, teeth. Each specimen was individually sealed in a bag or container and turned over to Anthony Valenti on December 28th, 2021. So 3 days prior to this search. He placed the specimen in a sealed plastic tote and hid it in the marsh.
And the results, please?
On the day of the search, I'm just going over the notes.
Sure.
I noted on the day of the search, I informed where I wished to start the training based on the wind. And he stated that the hide was in the marsh and that he was present but outside the search area with his son. So there's no scale in this photo. This is approximately 40 acres. It's quite large.
Wow.
So that's why he states generally it's going to be in the marsh. The marsh is at any given time, depending on rainfall, standing water where if you see where the X is in Hyde, it's lighter colored swooping through there. That's normally standing water. And as it gets green, pushing to the left of the photo before the trees on the outside,
Yes.
that's there's typically standing water there as well.
Okay.
So he tells me it's in the marsh to try and narrow down so I'm not spending hours out in the trees, just to kind of give me a general direction.
Okay. And that helps you determine your starting point?
Yes.
Okay. And tell us what happened during this search. We can go to the next page.
This search lasted approximately 13 minutes. Raven located the hide with a train formal alert at the source, and it was hidden under timber and brush in the marsh. There was a change of behavior observed, and I noted that it was approximately 30 to 40 downwind. I don't recall if that was in feet or yards. It's just worth noting to me that she had a change of behavior downwind from the source.
Okay.
I don't recall if there was a photograph of this one in here. No.
No. Okay, we're getting there. January 18th of '22. Can you describe this training for us, please?
Sure can. Tuesday, January 18th, 2022. This was at the Racine County Sheriff's Office Patrol Station. Started at 10:30 in the morning and went till 1:30 in the afternoon. There's one hide, one search, and it's a vehicle search. It's off lead with a hand reward. I note the weather conditions. The specimen is a skull, bone with tissue, a scent article, bone bags, and teeth. I placed all those items in a Ford Explorer, a former patrol squad, and I placed it in the rear of the vehicle at 10:30 a.m. Within the search area were 15 various vehicles. I note that the start time is at 1:15. I note that she was very fast from the starting point rather than more controlled pace. I noted that she quickly zeroed in on the targeted vehicle that had the specimen in it and showed a change of behavior. I noted that she began to search 4 vehicles, one of them being the target vehicle, and she gave a trained formal alert to the vehicle next to the target vehicle south of. No reward was provided, and then we conducted a detailed search of each of the 4 vehicles, and she gave a trained formal alert at the target vehicle.
When you say, basically she hit on the wrong car, right?
Correct.
And so then you said you did not reward her.
Correct.
Is that the proper response for the handler?
Correct. If I give a reward to that, I'm basically rewarding a false positive. It's explainable why it would happen if you look at wind speeds, wind directions, air pooling in the area, the vehicle being directly parked next to the vehicle that had the specimen in, and the amount of specimen that was in the vehicle. So to narrow down the change of behavior, we slow it down, have her detail search each of the vehicles, and in this case, she gave a trained formal alert at the vehicle the specimen was in.
Okay. Next page, search documented for January 28 of 2022.
So this training was conducted inside the Racine County Sheriff's Office Patrol Station from 7:45 a.m. to 8:45 a.m. This was a blind training, meaning another investigator would hide the training aids. He would tell me when the training aids were hidden, and then we would come out and conduct a search. I note the weather details. It's pretty insignificant considering it was an indoor or interior training. The specimen for it was 11 teeth, sealed in dental packaging and secured in a plastic screw top jar. This is how we would receive the unsterilized extracted teeth from dental surgeons when we would go and pick them up.
Okay.
So basically, I didn't rip any of these open once receiving them, just place them into the jar. So 4 rounds of this were conducted. I note the investigator that had set it up, and the graphic in the lower left is how the training was set up. Either the boxes were in some sort of linear fashion, direct linear or staggered linear, and in total distance for all the boxes would be roughly from me to you, is how far all of the boxes were.
Okay,
So there's only a few feet between each box.
understood.
The point of this is trying to get Raven to slow down a bit and to detail search these boxes. Okay, because if we end up leaving these boxes out there for an extended period of time with the airflow in the hallway, the odor of the teeth would would start to fill up the entire hallway. So I noted on the first round, she gave a change of behavior at the correct box, but she formal alerted at an incorrect box. So that graphic is noted in the lower left corner where it's labeled number 1. The box that has the X in it has the training aid or the teeth, and she gave her formal alert at the box next to it. During the round 2, she gave a train formal alert to the correct box. 3 was the correct box. 4 was the correct box.
Okay,
I noted that her behavior for round 1 and 2 was asystematic, and to try to explain that or be clear in terms of that, starting off in training, and this is especially true for open area searches, if you can imagine the canine is on a 50-foot lead, I'm casting the dog to work in a serpentine or a staggered pattern. Eventually we got to a point in her training where we no longer use a lead to teach that, and that's just a natural search pattern for her. When I say that in this it was asystematic, it wasn't from box to box to box or from the first to the next staggered in a systematic pattern. It was run down to 1 or come back to the second. That's what I mean by asystematic, hectic.
I see.
So I took her out and we took a 10-minute break and then continued round 3 and 4. She's a little settled down. This is also relative to her being excited to work.
Okay. Thank you. Next page, February 4, 2022 training. Well, actually, I guess the preparation was on the 4th and the training was on the 7th, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So I stated earlier you try to create certain environments for training that you want to learn how the dog is going to work in that environment. I knew that there was going to be a potential search coming up where human remains were possibly frozen or in water frozen. So I was trying to create a training in a training environment, a similar scenario, so I could see how Raven would react to human remains being frozen in water. So that's why it's labeled as frozen water bin training. So again, I note the weather conditions, and then I note the specimen that I froze. So there were 14 teeth, 2 placentas, mandible, and skin. I prepared it by using 5 plastic bins. I note their dimensions. I noted that they were rinsed, then filled with water, so 15 gallons of water. All 5 bins were brought outside. There's a photograph to show that. To start the freezing process, I placed all specimen was placed in a single bin. That's also shown in a photograph. Both placentas were weighed down utilizing rocks. And the reason I did that is because the placentas were starting to float, and I didn't want them to be at the surface of the ice. I wanted them to be under the surface.
Okay.
So rocks were utilized to weigh them down. All 5 bins were then covered. Once the water in the bins were frozen, I staggered them, similar to how I described her casting or search pattern. And the distance would vary, but it would be like no closer than 10 to 15 yards. So there was some decent distance between them. I noted in my training notes here why I was doing this training or the purpose of the training, and that there was a search that was upcoming. And then the actual search was conducted on Monday, February 7th, so 3 days after the preparation. I noticed the weather and the weather conditions, and I noted that the specimen that's listed at the top of the sheet was actually frozen.
Okay. Next page, please. You did a total of 4 rounds of searching?
4 rounds were conducted. Specimen bin in place 5, so places 1 through 4 were blank, just frozen water. I noted that Canine Raven was quick from the start, bypassed bins 2 and 4, checked bins 1 and 3, exhibited a change of behavior at bin 5, which was the source. I noted that Canine Raven conducted a fringe area check, which is pretty typical for her, before returning to the source, where she licked, pawed, and provided a trained formal alert.
Round 2?
Round 2, the specimen bin was set in place 3. 1, 2, 4, and 5 were blank. Raven bypassed bin 2, checked bin 1, exhibited a change of behavior at bin 3, which was the source. She proceeded to check the remainder of the bins, conduct another fringe area check, return to bin 3, where she licked it, and then provided a trained formal alert.
Round 3?
The bin was place 4, so 1 through 3 and 5 were blank. Raven checked all bins out of sequence, meaning not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She exhibited a change of behavior at bin 4, conducted a fringe area check, and then a trained formal alert to source. And then round 4, specimen bin was in place 1, so 2 through 5 were blank. She checked all bins. I put out of sequence again, but exhibited a change of behavior at bin 1, fringe area check, and then a trained formal alert to source.
Next page, just documenting the...
These were images of prepping for the training. So the bin at the bottom of the image was the container that had all the specimen, and the bins going up to the top of the page were all empty with just water.
Okay, next page.
That's another image of the specimen in the unfrozen water.
All right. Next page is a search from March 17th of 2022.
So this was a training conducted.
All right, you know what, actually, we have another case that's gonna come in 10 minutes.
Sure,
So let's take a break now, okay?
sounds good.
And hopefully that case won't take that long, just no more than 5 minutes or so. So you can, gentlemen, I'd ask you to just probably push your stuff over a little bit, or you may want to take it with you, right? On the defense table, obviously. All right, so let's stand down for, you're going to have a break longer than 10 minutes. All right? All right, we finished up with Mr. Willis, Andrew Willis. Does the state have any other witnesses?
No, the state has no other witnesses
For this part of the
on,
matter?
on this issue, Your Honor.
All right, and Mr. Jensen, you have testimony?
Yes.
Okay, call your witness.
Oh, I'll call Jerry Potter.
All right. Sir, come on up to the witness stand to my right. Remain standing and raise your right hand once you get up here, sir, okay?
That's not that kind of a hearing.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. All right, have a seat, sir. And tell me your full name, please.
Jerry Potter,
All right, spell Jerry for us.
Jerry.
Okay, and common spelling for Potter?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, sir.
Mr. Potter, could you again state your name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Jerry Potter, Potter.
And currently, where is your office or your residence, depending on whether you work out of home?
In Two Rivers, Wisconsin. It's my home.
And could you summarize for us what your relevant education and qualifications are?
Well, I was a dog handler in the military for 14 years. I was a dog trainer. I trained people how to become dog handlers. I oversaw training as a supervisor. I've been a narcotics custodian, an explosives custodian. Since my retirement from the military, I've testified numerous times in various state and federal courts around the country as an expert in detection canine.
And specifically with regard to working with canines, did you have an area that you focused on?
Well, I was certified in pretty much anything dogs did. In the military, we primarily did patrol tasks such as aggression, obedience, tracking, as well as either narcotics detection or explosive detection.
Do you have any experience with cadaver dogs?
Not directly, but cadaver dogs really aren't any different than any other detector dog. All the training principles are the same. The methodologies that are used for them are all pretty much the same. Odor detecting dogs are odor detecting dogs regardless of what it is that they're detecting.
Right, so the only difference is a cadaver dog is trained to detect the smell of rotting human flesh, and a drug dog is trained to detect drugs.
Correct.
But the principles are all the same.
All the principles are identical.
Do you have any experience working with canines?
But many years of it.
Okay, could you summarize that for us?
Well, I became a dog handler in 1993. I attended the 3-month training, became a patrol and detection dog handler. From there, I went operational in San Diego, California. I worked a dual-purpose patrol drug dog. After that, I went to the Lackland Air Force Base, which is the Department of Defense Joint Service Training Center for all dogs for the military as well as the Department of Defense. I was a trainer there. When the military buys a dog, it's brand new. It's a clean slate, knows nothing. We train them in what we want them to know, get them up to a certain proficiency for certification level, and then they get deployed to bases around the world. After training and certifying a couple of dogs there, I then moved over to the schoolhouse and became an instructor, teaching students how to become dog handlers, teaching them all about animal behavior, psychology, what to look for, rewards, everything they need to know to become a functional handler. After that, I went back operational to Guam, where I worked several dogs in Guam, 2 different drug dogs, 1 explosives dog. I was also the kennel master, the narcotics custodian, explosives custodian, the kennel master. I oversaw 8 other handlers, their training, schedules, making sure that everything was being done properly. Then I went back to Lackland again and again was a dog trainer. I did some time instructing at the military police academy down there. After a deployment to Iraq, I came back and was put as the overall NCO in charge of the entire detection training program, where I was overseeing and supervising the training of all drug and bomb dogs that were being trained for deployment around the world. And then I
Have you ever
retired.
testified in court before as an expert concerning dogs?
Yes, many times.
Do you know how many times?
The exact number I don't, but it's probably close to 40 plus times.
And you've provided me with a written CV, correct?
Yes.
Could I ask the clerk what number we're on as far as exhibits?
We,
How how many exhibits do you have marked, ma'am?
We have 1 through 11 marked currently.
Total for all hearings today?
Yes.
All right. We'll start at 12.
Oh, sorry.
Could I get a scale on this?
Of course.
Put it on my wall. Mr. Potter, I'm showing you what's marked as exhibit number 12. I want you to take a minute, page through that, and then tell me if you recognize what that is.
Yes, that is my most current CV.
And is all the information on there true and correct as of today?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move exhibit number 12.
Any objection?
No.
12 is admitted.
So, Mr. Potter, you were asked to review the information concerning the dog sniff in this case, correct?
Yes.
And can you tell us what information concerning that topic you reviewed?
I reviewed the training records and the report that was written by the dog handler.
And you also wrote your own report, correct?
Yes.
And I'm going to walk you through that right now, okay? So do you have any issue with Raven being certified by the NNDDA?
No, I'm very familiar with that organization. They're a very good, reputable organization.
Does that organization certify dogs to do residual searches?
In certification, no. I have yet to see a certification where residual is part of the process.
And just so we're all talking about the same thing, could you define for us what is a residual?
A residual is where a substance has been, let's just, for the sake of simplicity, call it narcotics. If you had some marijuana in your briefcase and then you remove it, up to several days later, that odor is still going to be lingering in there, and it's possible for a dog to detect it.
And this morning, Mr. Willis testified that Raven, the dog in question, was trained to alert to human remains that include, but not limited to, human blood, bone, nerve, organs, brain, skin, and other tissues, correct?
Yes.
Is that common? Is that what cadaver dogs are trained to do?
Yes, they're trained on a variety of different body parts, organs, tissues, so they can hit on literally anything.
In your experience, can a cadaver dog differentiate between the odor of decaying liver as opposed to decaying skin?
My understanding of the specific training as it relates to the odors that cadaver dogs are trained on, no. It all smells the same to the dog.
And there was testimony from Mr. Willis this morning that Raven was trained to not respond to a small amount of odor. Did you hear that?
I heard that, yes.
Is that true?
Raven is trained to respond to whatever she can detect and get to the strongest source of.
So is it possible the dog could have smelled a small amount of blood but not responded to it?
Oh, it's absolutely possible.
Is that what she was trained to do, as far as you can tell?
As far as I can tell, she was trained to locate the odors, determine the strongest source, and give her final alert.
And is that common?
Yes.
Now, how does one go about training a cadaver dog?
Well, the methodology that he used was they basically scented a toy with a decaying human smell and just played with her. And she learned to associate that smell with playing with a toy. It's working on her prey, kill, and hunting instincts. Dogs like to play, they like to fetch, they like to chase the ball. So once she played with that enough and was able to make that association, well, then they take the toy away from it, just put the odor. She smells the odor, associates that with the toy, gets excited, then they train in the conditioned response of the sit once she gets to the source, and that's how she earns the toy. So in reality, in Raven's mind, she's not smelling people, she's smelling her toy.
Okay. You've reviewed Mr. Willis's training records, correct?
Yes.
Did you notice any deficiencies in the training of Raven?
Nothing that concerned me. There were a couple of times that Raven had some misses or some difficulties, but there was nothing in there that was concerning. No dog is perfect.
Okay, on that point, that no dog is perfect. Are dogs capable of deception?
Absolutely.
Can you give us an example of what that would be?
Sure. I can give you a firsthand example of one of the dogs that were at my first kennel, Belgian Malinois named Ricky, that he was a food reward dog. So he knew that the only time he got to eat was when he found drugs. Ricky thought he could get away with going in and just sitting anytime he wanted to get some free food. But there were certain behavioral characteristics that he would display when the drugs were actually present versus when they weren't, so that we could figure out when Ricky was lying to us just to get his food.
Right, so when Ricky would sit down fraudulently in order to get his dog treat, you could also check to see if there were any drugs in that area, right?
Well, it was a controlled environment. We knew there were no drugs there because
Okay.
it was a training is a controlled environment. We know someone in that room knows whether or not there is actually drugs there.
Right, the dog's assertion could be verified or rebutted, right?
Correct.
When it comes to residual smells of decaying flesh, human flesh, is it possible to corroborate whether the dog is right or wrong when they indicate?
If there's no body or tissue or substances present, no.
So the dog, for example, in this case, Raven, indicated at the corner of Mr. Pahl's car. Do you know whether that was accurate or not accurate?
I have no way of determining that.
Is it possible to determine whether the dog was being accurate or not?
No, only the dog knows. He could have been right. There could have possibly been a residual odor that he picked on, but it's also just as possible the dog was flat out wrong. Either way, neither one can be proven or disproven.
Okay, so for example, when a cadaver dog is used to locate a dead body, when the dog indicates you can look for the dead body, right?
Correct.
But in this case, the dog was asserting that she smelled the odor of decaying flesh, right?
Yes.
But there's no way to check on that.
In this
corroborate.
my understanding of this case, there was no flesh detectable by any scientific methodology that I'm aware of.
In your report, you made a note that the report did not say that Raven was presented with any items from the body to identify. Why did you make that remark?
It's a very common thing in a situation of an article retrieval. For example, if we're looking for a specific person that ran across a field or something, we will present the dog with an item that has that person's scent on it, and then ask them to follow a trail to lead us to that particular person by scent. So I just wanted to make sure that it was established that Raven was not given any prior information of any person or anything ahead of time to specifically say, go look for this.
So would it have been possible for the handler to present Raven with clothing known to have been worn by the victim, Stephanie Pavlon?
I suppose it's possible, but I don't believe that happened.
Right. And my next question was, if that's done, would the dog have been able to indicate whether or not this was tissue from Stephanie Pavlon or not?
No, I don't believe that would have been an issue.
Do you believe that Raven's indication at the back corner of Mr. Pahl's truck would in any way be helpful to the jury in resolving this case?
Objection, that's not a proper question for this witness. That's for the court to decide.
Well, it's a factual question, and is one of the things that's in the statute is whether the testimony of the witness would be helpful to the jury.
I'll allow him to respond.
No, because any inferences that are made based on this dog's alert on that truck is purely conjecture, theory. The dog's alert just says that if you give the dog the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, there was an odor there that she was trained to find, it doesn't tell you whose odor what body that came from, how long it had been there, when it was put there, how it was put there. You can't, any inference you make of that is purely theoretical. The dog can't tell you whose decomposing body odor she detected.
So that in this case, under the facts of this case, Raven could have been alerting to the smell of decaying flesh in one of the wrecks.
It's possible.
Did you say in one of the racks?
Wrecks, W-R-E, crash cars. Do you have any opinion or knowledge as to how long the scent of decaying flesh will remain on the surface of any object?
It just depends on the object, the concentrations that are there. A more porous area such as like a cloth seat will retain an odor for longer than, say, this laminate countertop. There's really not as much for it to absorb into and hold, so it's more likely to decay and evaporate on a less porous surface. There's also environmental factors, temperature, humidity. There's, to say something is impossible or impossible, you really can't say.
Is it possible to wash off the smell of decaying flesh on an object?
Yes.
So if Mr. Pahl's vehicle had gone through a car wash, would you expect that to increase or decrease the odor of decaying flesh?
I would expect, at least for the areas that were washed, it would decrease the amount of decaying flesh.
In order for there to be an odor of decaying flesh, does there have to be some tissue of some kind on the surface of the object?
Something would have had to have come into contact. Some sort of tissue, body tissue, fluid, something would have had to come into contact.
Would it have to still be there when the dog alerted?
The odor or the tissue itself?
The tissue itself?
No, the tissue itself would not necessarily have to still be there.
Okay. That's all I have.
Cross-examination?
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Potter.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
So I just want to understand your background here is that you have never worked specifically in the field of human detection remain.
Not remains, no. Every human that I've ever trained a dog to find was still alive.
Okay, so you have, for military purposes, tried to detect like search and rescue type situations, or?
Not so much search and rescue, but a fleeing suspect,
I see.
hiding in a building type of a
Okay.
thing, tracking a missing person that we
Sure.
know the route that they took.
Sure, okay. So you've expressed a lot of opinions here today about the field specific to cadaver dogs and what they're trained to do and what it is they're detecting and things like that, correct?
Well, yes, today's testimony is specifically relating to a cadaver dog, but how a cadaver dog works and odors is no different than a drug dog or a bomb dog. They all operate the same principles, the same way.
Sure, I understood you to say that, but I want to know the basis of your knowledge. How do you know what the volatile organic compounds are in a decomposing human body?
I'm not claiming to know that.
Isn't that what the dog is trained to detect, sir?
The dog is trained to detect an odor that results from that, yes.
Okay. but you don't know what those are.
It's the, I don't remember what the name of it was that the officer testified, some technical name of the odor that decaying bodies create. That is the odor that the dogs are trained to detect.
Okay, but you don't know what that is, and you've
I
never.
don't know the name of it off the top of my head, but
Okay.
odor is odor.
Have you ever received any formal training in this area, sir?
On odor detection, yes.
Specific to decaying human remains?
No, but odor is odor. Doesn't matter what the cause is.
Have you ever read any published studies or literature in this field?
I did do some research on this. I couldn't cite you what it was, but I did do some research when I took this case on to see if there was anything that I immediately found that would require some additional research, but I didn't come across anything that was outside of what I felt my scope of knowledge was.
So, do you remember, were these books, were these professional papers in scientific journals?
I found one book online. I cited it in the report that I wrote, that talks about cadaver dogs and training and certification of cadaver dogs, but everything that I remember reading from it was pretty consistent with everything for any dog, regardless of the odor. You know, whether it be cadaver, search and rescue dogs are different, different smells, just like drug dogs are different smells. Bomb dogs are different smells. Medical research dogs are different smells, but all of the underlying scientific data and methodology is all the same, regardless of what it is the dog is sniffing for.
So this one book that you cited in your report, did you purchase that book?
No, I read it I looked at it online. I didn't even read the whole thing. I glanced through it for the parts that I felt were relevant to training.
Like in the Amazon preview of the book, they give you so many pages you can read for free? Is that what you did?
I don't remember. I honestly don't remember the exact what it was that I saw. Yeah, I read maybe 20 pages of this material.
Who wrote the book?
It's in my report. I don't know off the top of my head.
Is the person who wrote the book an expert?
I have no idea.
Okay. Anything besides that book that you can remember, sir?
Specifically towards cadaver, no. Just my experience with odor being odor.
And would you agree with me? Well, let me ask it this way. After a person dies, how long does it take for the body to start decomposing?
It's immediate.
Immediate, okay. And the odor associated with that, these volatile organic compounds that are released in the decomposition process, they are present immediately, is that correct?
I would presume so. I would have no reason to doubt that.
Okay. You don't know, though?
I don't know for certain, but it makes sense that it would be.
Okay. And you would agree with me that once a person has stopped living and has become deceased, the odor of one person is the exact same as the odor of a second person, correct?
That is my understanding of how it works, yes.
And there are published studies in that regard, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
So your theory that the detective should have given Raven a shoe from the deceased and have her smell that so she could definitely say these are the deceased or the victim's remains is really flawed, isn't it?
No, that's not what my testimony is that he should have done. He didn't do it. I'm glad he did not do that because I think that would have been an improper thing to do.
I see. I thought you were suggesting in your testimony that the way to do it would be to give Raven an item from the known victim.
No, that's not what I was trying to convey.
Okay. Let me just check what you wrote here in your report, please. Okay. So you're agreeing with me that a dog, any trained dog, can only say decaying human remains. It can't say decaying human remains of Sue Opper or Christy Gordon, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And there's no way to train them any better on that because all dead people smell the same or give off the same odor.
Correct.
Okay.
And even if you could make a dog differentiate, for example, a drug dog is trained on 5, 6, 7, 8 different drug odors. When that dog alerts,
You
the
don't know?
handler has no idea which one of those odors the dog is alerting to.
Sure.
Only that it's one of the odors that he's trained to alert to. So even if you could differentiate the dog for various people, it still doesn't tell you whose odor that they responded to at that point.
Yeah, that's a good example. Just like in this case, it's human remains. We don't know if it's bone or tissue or placenta or anything else, right?
No idea. Only the dog would know.
Okay. You do agree with me that it is possible for residual odor from a decaying human being to be found or detected on an object, correct?
Yes, it is possible.
Including clothing?
If the clothing were in contact with the deceased body, yes.
Okay, do they have to be in direct contact?
I don't know if it would require direct contact, but at least if it's not in direct contact, it would have to be at least within a close proximity for a longer period of time. I mean, in a direct contact, there's immediate transfer of odors, but if it's just sitting next to it, the absorption rate would be totally different.
Like how long?
Depends on the various materials, what the odors are. I couldn't give you a definitive answer to that.
Okay, are you basing this on personal experience or some training or some study that you read? How do you know this information, sir?
Well, I know from personal experience, there were times that we would put, for example, cotton balls in with our narcotics and then hide the cotton balls for training purposes. I know the cotton balls were absorbing that smell, but they would be in the containers with the narcotics literally for months at a time.
Okay,
So if I just just for example, if I found a dead body, I laid a washcloth on the ground, 5 minutes later picked it up, I would be very surprised if a dog alerted on that washcloth, because not a whole lot of time's lapsed. I'm not saying it's impossible, but in my opinion, I think it's probably very unlikely.
are you familiar with a study out of Germany that was completed by a gentleman by the last name of Osterhellwig? I could spell that if you would like.
It does not.
Wait, hang on, whoa. You better spell that.
Okay. My German is good, sir. Oesterherweg. Osterhellwig.
I do not recognize that name.
Are you familiar with the study that he completed? Have you ever heard of a study that was done in Germany involving carpet squares placed onto cadavers to detect the residual odor of human remains?
No, I'm not familiar with that study, but from what you described, if they're putting carpet squares on top of a dead body, there's a direct contact and absorption into those carpet squares. So I have no doubt that a dog would alert to those carpet squares.
Would you be surprised to know that after placing the square on the body for only 2 minutes, the dogs are 94% in their accuracy?
No, that wouldn't surprise me.
2 minutes,
Wouldn't surprise me.
not a long period of time, correct?
For direct contact, no.
Okay. But you have never heard of that study before?
No.
Okay. You do agree that Raven is trained to detect only the odor of decomposing human remains?
Yes.
And human remains is much broader than flesh, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You said that the only way to corroborate an alert by a canine on an odor is to actually find the product there that you were looking for, right?
In an actual search situation, yes.
Well, there's other ways to corroborate, correct?
In an actual search situation,
After.
after, no.
No?
If no other information is available to definitively say yes or no,
I didn't say that in my hypothetical, I'm sorry. I didn't say there was no other information available. You testified on direct examination that the only way to know if the dog is accurate or not is to actually find the item that you're searching for in the area.
some sort of DNA, flesh, yes. some sort of decomposing material of some sort, yes.
What about a confession?
Well,
I'm gonna object, that's argumentative.
apparently, I guess if a person confesses that, yes, I put a dead body there, that would corroborate.
Okay, what about an eyewitness that gets located years later?
That
That
could help,
corroborate?
that could help corroborate.
Okay. You would agree with me that the odor of decomposing human remains can be detected by canines years and even decades later, correct?
I suppose there are circumstances where that is possible.
Have you read any studies to support that, sir?
No, but knowing what I know about how odor can linger sometimes for extended periods of time, I can't say it's impossible, so
You can't say it's possible or impossible, you don't know.
I think it is possible. May not be a very commonplace thing, but I'm sure it's possible.
Sounds right to you,
It sounds possible.
okay. But you haven't read anything either way to say if my suggestion is correct or not?
No.
Okay. You said that if Mr. Paul's truck had been washed, that could potentially wash off an odor, correct?
It is possible, yes.
What do you base that on, sir?
Just my knowledge of how to get odor out of an area that I know it is that I don't want it to be. I've sanitized odor out of many areas.
Well, at a car wash, would you typically sanitize the inside of a truck bed?
I do with my truck, yes.
Okay, sanitize it.
Well, I take the wand and soap and brush and wash it, yes.
Okay. And you said that in your experience, that would decrease the amount of decaying flesh, was the question that was asked by counsel. That's your opinion, that a car wash would decrease the amount of decaying flesh.
Yeah, I think it's very likely that it would, yes.
What do you base that on?
Just my experience of knowing how to sanitize an area of odor, that if something smells, it's like any other stain. You wash it, some of it may stay, it may go completely away.
Have you ever tested this theory of yours?
With narcotic odors, yes.
Okay. So you put narcotics in the back of a truck and then took it to a car wash and washed it and asked your dog to hit on it?
Yes.
How'd it work?
Dog didn't find anything.
Dog did not find anything?
Nope.
What'd you wash the truck with?
Whatever detergents are used at the car wash.
Okay. How many times did you do that?
I couldn't give you an exact number, maybe 2 or 3 times. You know, if I've used the same vehicle numerous times and I want to reduce the likelihood of the dog still finding residuals, I would go clean the truck.
Okay. So you were, I'm sorry, this is a bad question. You were intentionally trying to remove the odor from the truck? That's what
Yes.
you're telling me? Okay. And you did that about 2 or 3 times in the course of 14 years?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. Can you cite to any scientific studies or published literature of any kind that you have reviewed as it relates to the length of time that the odor of decaying human remains remains present?
I don't know. No, I can't cite any studies because I don't think anybody can say a definitive answer to any of that because there's so many variables that affect things that, there's variables, like you said, possibly 10 years later, possibly only 2 days. It's impossible to say definitively.
But it has been studied. You'd agree with me?
I'm sure it has.
You don't know.
I'm sure it has.
Okay. And you're not suggesting that Raven actually alerted on the back of Mr. Paul's vehicle?
I'm sure, I have no doubt that Raven sat at the back of Mr. Paul's vehicle.
Okay.
What caused Raven to sit, only Raven knows.
Well, it's the odor of decomposing human remains that she was trained to provide a
That
formal alert for, correct?
is an uncorroborated assumption.
Okay,
It could be Raven was wrong.
could
Could
be,
be Raven false. It's possible.
could be she was right, right?
It's entirely possible.
That's the extent of your testimony here today. She might be right, she might be wrong.
She might be right, she might be wrong, and even if she is right, it doesn't say whose remains she alerted to.
Okay? And there's no way she could ever say that. You agreed with me earlier.
Yes, no way she could say that.
Okay. Now, at the conclusion of your report, on the second page, do you have your report with you, sir?
No, I do not.
Okay. You wrote that the odor detected by Raven could have easily been that of the suspects, right?
Yes,
Meaning Mr. Pahl.
yes.
Mr. Pahl is not deceased. You'd agree with me, correct?
No, but if Mr. Paul left some sort of flesh on the truck, as soon as it left his body, it would begin to decaying, just like if your heart stops beating,
Sure.
and Raven would be able to detect that also.
And you agree with me that the crime lab search that was done in this case found no such evidence, correct?
Of anybody, correct?
Of anybody.
Anybody.
So your theory is incorrect, right?
No, my theory is if Raven was able to detect decaying human remains, it is just as likely it came from him as the owner of the truck, someone who's been in and out of that truck, possibly left some sort of skin behind, or even a buddy that he loaned the truck to, a mechanic that worked on the truck. Anybody who has potentially scraped themselves and left a DNA sample behind in that truck could potentially cause her to alert.
And you're saying that even though you just told us the car wash could erase all of that stuff?
I'm saying the car wash possibly could erase all of it.
Okay.
Or at least reduce it.
Okay. You also wrote that it's possible that there were bodily fluids left behind during sexual relations on the tailgate.
It's one possible theory.
Okay. And again, not decomposing human remains.
Well, any bodily fluids become decomposing remains.
Is that right?
With my understanding, yes.
Well, what do you base that understanding on?
That body fluids come from the human body. Once they leave the human body, they decompose.
Okay. So all body fluids would fall in the category of decomposing human remains.
Yes.
Okay. And then you go on to say there's no way of determining the origins of the odor Raven alerted to.
Yes, assuming that Raven's alert is correct, there's no way of determining the origins.
Okay. But we know it was decomposing human remains.
If we assume that Raven's alert is correct, yes.
Well, that's all she's trained to alert to, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But again, assuming she wasn't wrong or false.
Okay. And you're aware that the crime lab searched the back of that truck, right?
Yes, I read a report where they sprayed it with luminol. Some swabs were taken from various areas of the truck, but nothing was able to be determined from those swabs.
Well, actually, what they found was there was no blood detected in those
Okay.
swabs, correct?
That's the report that I read.
And that's an important distinction, right? There was no blood detected in the back of that truck.
Okay?
You would agree with me that the search that was performed by Investigator Willis was done on September 19th of 2022?
I believe that's the date. I have no reason to doubt that.
Okay. Do you agree with me that the deceased victim was found on September 9 of 2022?
That's what I read in reports.
Okay. And that Mr. Pahl's truck was seized from him on September 17th of 2022?
That's what I read in reports.
And maintained on property inventory, sealed by the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department, correct?
That's what the reports say.
Okay. You're aware that the reports of the investigation has determined the last time the victim was found, or excuse me, was seen alive was the date of August 23 of 2022?
I didn't read that far into the report, so I don't know. I didn't deem that information relevant to
Okay.
me.
But you would agree with me the date of August 23 to 2022 to September 17 of 2022 is less than 1 month, correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you would agree with me that it would be very reasonable to think the odor of human remains would still be present in the truck, if in fact that's what happened
I think it is possible.
in a month?
I think it is possible.
In fact, likely, isn't it?
I think it is possible.
Okay. You would agree with me that the crime lab search that occurred in this case did not occur prior to the canine search, correct?
I don't know when that occurred.
It occurred on September 20th of 2021. Do you have any reason to dispute that?
No.
Okay. So by that timing, the canine went through the truck first, and then the crime lab came out the next day. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Is that how you would do it?
Yeah, I would want to run the dog as one of the first steps versus the crime lab.
Sure. So you agree that was a good step?
Sure.
Okay. Just 1 second, please. Okay. Okay, sir, thank you.
Nothing else?
No, sir. Sorry, no other questions.
Okay, redirect.
What is queuing?
Cueing is when the handler's actions influence the dog's alerts. Oftentimes they're subconscious, the handlers don't even realize that they're doing it. It could be something as simple as slowing down your pace because you think there's something there, or you know that there's something there and you don't want your dog to miss it. The dog will pick up on those subtle changes from the handler and react more to the handler's actions than the actual odor to elicit the response.
Do we know whether there's any evidence that Officer Willis was cueing Raven?
I don't believe in this case that was the case based on how he explained he works Raven off leash and away from her for that purpose. I don't believe I have no reason to believe that he cued his dog.
Is it common practice to videotape a dog search?
In some cases, yes, not always. Most times when I'm reviewing cases like this that involve law enforcement, there's usually a body cam worn by either the handler or other officers on the scene, or dash cam videos of what's going on. I don't know what this department's policy is as far as videotaping things like this. It's not unheard of for there to not be video, but majority of the cases I review, there is.
That's all the questions I have.
Any recross?
No, sir, thank you.
All right. I have a question or two, sir.
Yes, sir.
And then I'll allow the attorneys to ask questions too. So for example, you talked a lot about on the back of the truck or search, if there could have been bodily fluid, somebody having sex on the back, or some other person being scraped or injured, right? And so a dog, you believe, trained to sniff as a cadaver dog might alert on something like that.
I think it's a possibility.
Right. So then, and I'm just trying to understand clearly, so for example, you've trained narcotics dogs for a long time, right?
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned you would take, for example, like a cotton ball or something, and it would be with narcotics. And then you would transfer that somewhere else, the ball, the cotton ball, and the dogs could detect that, not narcotics, but the scent of the narcotics on the cotton ball.
Yes.
But there would be no
There
narcotics.
would be no actual cocaine in the cotton ball, just the smell of it
Just
was
the smell.
absorbed.
All right. And so then likewise, just the smell of a cadaver could remain on the truck as well? No flesh necessarily, but just the smell of the cadaver.
If the flesh was there at some point, yes. How long would it remain? I don't know.
Okay, all right. Questions for him based on my question, Mr. Chen, from the state?
No, sir.
Okay. Then that's it for him?
Yes,
Right, you're excused.
I do have one more thing on this motion.
For him?
No,
No, okay, thank you, sir. You're excused. He can stay or leave, whatever he wants to do, correct? All right, thank you, sir. I'll take that. Thank you. And that's exhibit number 12, and I have that now, sir. Okay.
Then the last thing I have is exhibit number 13, which is the November 15th, 2024 report from the State Crime Lab that was referred to in the cross-examination of Mr. Potter. And I know the court can read the report itself, but the last sentence on the first page reads, "The processing of the vehicle included the application of luminol, a chemical agent, a chemical that assists in the visualization of blood. Luminol was applied to the entire bed of the truck as well as the passenger seat. All areas tested demonstrated faint fluorescence and were therefore swabbed for potential trace biological material."
Spell luminol.
Luminol.
All right, thank you. Can you give it to my clerk?
Move that into evidence.
Any objection?
Well, it's hearsay, but I'd then like to move in another exhibit that talks about the actual results of the swabs. Luminol was faintly detected, so they swabbed it, then they analyzed the swabs and no blood was detected, as Mr. Potter testified to on cross-examination. So I have exhibit 11 I'd like to provide as well, if you're going to accept
Well,
13.
Well, I don't know if I was going to accept 13, but you have 11 that shows the results of the luminol swabbing.
Yes.
Do you object to that?
No, because I
All
don't
right,
think the
I'll
rules
accept
of evidence
both
apply at these
13 and
hearings.
11. All right,
Okay.
where's 11?
We have a digital copy I can,
Is it part of your,
we can email it to your clerk right now, sir.
okay, go ahead and do that. Give me 1 second, I have to consult with my clerk.
Oh, it's on there now? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he moved it. Yeah, I accepted it.
I give one to the, that's what
Right,
you send it.
you moved exhibit 12 and there was no objection to it, the CV.
Right, the CD, yeah.
Correct.
Okay. This does have 11 on it.
All right, this meaning the flash drive that has the other exhibits. So it has 1 through 11 on it, correct?
Yes, and Exhibit 1 relates to the Miranda motion that we have not yet gotten to.
Okay, and tell me what 11 is. It's a crime lab report, right?
Crime lab report with the results of the areas that were swabbed.
Okay. And again, you have no objection to that?
No.
Okay. Anything else from the defense? Anything else from the defense?
No, not on that motion.
Not on the dog motion? Okay. Anything else from the state?
No.
Okay. Your motion to exclude.
Can I ask, I don't have an exhibit 11 on my thumb drive.
I'll email it right now, I'm sorry.
Or is it exhibit 10?
No, 10 was not used.
All right. Let's hear from everyone. Mr. Jensen.
Well, in my opinion, there is a huge problem with presenting the testimony of Agent Willis or Officer Willis concerning the drug sniff, the dog sniff. And it's not necessarily with the science behind the dog sniff. It is with the procedure that was used and the relevance of that evidence and whether it would be helpful to the jury. I mean, I think we all concede, Mr. Potter and all of us, we all concede that dogs can be trained to detect the smell of decaying human flesh. Normally, that means they take the dog out into the field and they ask the dog to try to locate a dead body, and if the dog indicates, they can search and see if there's a dead body there. The dog's indication is not offered for the truth of the matter asserted. It's offered to explain why the police went and looked in a certain area for a dead body. This takes that science and that technology one step further and asks the court to admit this nonverbal assertion of Raven that she smelled the odor of decaying human flesh in a certain area, when it is literally impossible for me to cross-examine the dog about that, and it's literally impossible to corroborate whether she's telling the truth or not. To the extent we can corroborate it, there is the crime lab report that says they used luminol on the back of the truck, and I believe they swabbed it, and were not able to identify any human tissue from the back of that truck. So allowing the state to present this evidence of Raven indicating in the back corner of Mr. Pahl's truck is inviting the jury to speculate. It's inviting the jury to speculate that it was Stephanie Pavlon's decaying flesh. It's allowing the jury to speculate that perhaps the odor got there, you know, in the exact number of days earlier that would make it explain how she got out in the woods. And I have no way of cross-examining that. I mean, I have a feeling that when you first saw my brief and you said I was objecting on the grounds of hearsay, you may have chuckled a little, or you may have thought I'm starting to lose my mind. But it is.
I may have thought both, but I may have been wrong at both.
But I think it's an exceedingly important point in this motion that there is utterly no way to establish the relevance of that dog hit. And therefore, under 90702, it would not be helpful to the jury. In fact, what it would do is invite the jury to speculate that the dog indicated at the back of Mr. Pahl's truck, because there must have been a dead body in the back of the truck, and that dead body must have been Stephanie Pavlon. That is utter, pure speculation. And I can't do anything to cross-examine a dog. And it really does fit the definition of statement under the hearsay statute. It's a nonverbal assertion intended for the truth of the matter asserted. The dog's nonverbal assertion is sitting down, giving the handler the indication that she smells the odor of decaying flesh. And that can't be corroborated, it can't be proved, it can't be disproved, and I can't cross-examine it, and that's what makes it unfair, because it invites the jury to speculate.
All right, Ms. Opper?
Well, on that issue, Your Honor, the definition of a statement is under 90801 sub 1, nonverbal conduct of a person. Investigator Willis is the witness. Investigator Willis will have to answer all of Attorney Jensen's questions, just like he did here today. And it's not true that he can't cross-examine, because he can, and he did. He can raise all the concerns in front of the jury that he did today and challenge Investigator Willis on exactly these points. You can't say who left the odor, you can't say whose odor it was, all of that. This doesn't go to admissibility, it goes to weight. What will the jury do with it? That's for them to decide. In order for you to exclude it, you'd have to, again, say there's no basis for this is garbage, this is junk science, and it's not. It's very clearly, plainly accepted. Even Mr. Potter himself recognized that the certification is legitimate, the organization that certified the dog is legitimate. The dog, he says, I have no reason not to believe the dog alerted. He just says, we don't know what it means, but all of these points can be raised to the jury and challenged in front of the jury. We don't need the dog to testify. I spent a lot of time with Investigator Willis going through the training records, and that was on purpose because this dog has in the past hit on residual objects. She's been asked to complete searches where she hit on the location, and in fact, human remains were found. The detective testified to several instances where that happened. You have assurances of reliability, that this dog is well-trained, that she was handled properly, that she performed as she is supposed to perform. She's not perfect. There was a 93% accuracy rating that was presented. But again, that the jury can hear that. The jury can hear it's not definite, it's not 100%. and they'll do with it what they want. But on the threshold question of admissibility, should this court admit it, it's highly relevant. When we have accused Mr. Pahl of causing the death of Stephanie Pavlon's, and an odor of human remains is detected in his vehicle less than a month after we believe she went missing, that's highly relevant, Your Honor. Is it prejudicial? Yes. Most of what the state presents in a prosecution is prejudicial. Is it unfairly prejudicial is the question the court has to be concerned with. And it's not, because it's based on science. It was properly performed and conducted by the handler. There's no suggestion he cued the dog or did anything inappropriate there. The science is there. The basis, the foundation for the opinion is there. And there's no reason this court should not conclude that this would be helpful to the jury. Certainly, this is outside the purview of an ordinary juror's knowledge as to how detection dogs are trained and operate and alert, and the process of decomposing human remains. Certainly, that's well beyond their scope. But Investigator Willis was very clear in his testimony, very easy to understand, and very certain in his testimony that that alert that he witnessed that day indicated that Raven detected the odor of decaying human remains. In a homicide case, Your Honor, that is highly relevant. So I'm asking you to deny the motion.
May I respond?
Yes.
Section 90401 defines relevant evidence. Relevant evidence means evidence having any tendency to make the existence of any fact that is of consequence to the determination of the action more probable or less probable than it would be without the evidence. And where the dog is unable to indicate whose flesh she's smelling, where she's smelling it, and what part of the body it is, and there's utterly no way to corroborate the dog's assertion, that has no tendency to make the existence of any fact more or less likely. All it is inviting the jury to speculate that, oh, this dog claimed to smell an odor of decaying flesh near Mr. Pahl's car, so he must be guilty. That's pure speculation. That's not evidence. The dog is a sentient being. It's not a machine like an intoximeter or a gas chromatograph or anything like that that can be checked for accuracy. You can't check a dog for accuracy. You can't check whether the dog was doing this because she wanted her ball or a treat. You can't check whether the dog actually was smelling the odor wafting over from the cars that were in a wreck. I mean, I don't think it's relevant, but if there is any minuscule probative value, it's outweighed by the unfair prejudice of allowing the jury to speculate. So that really is the reason I'm moving to exclude it.
What does the Bucky case tell us? B-U-C-K-I.
In order to give you a comprehensible answer, I'd have to read it again. I don't remember off the top of my head.
I mean, cadaver dog actions were admitted by a circuit court.
Right.
And approved by the appellate court. Correct?
Yes, and as I've said, we really don't have much of a quarrel with the science behind cadaver dogs. This is the way in which the cadaver dog was used in the way the state intends to present the evidence.
All right. Ms. Opper, same question. What does the Bucky case tell us?
Well, the Bucky case is very instructive, and I read it again last night, Your Honor. It's exactly on point. It's a situation where a husband reported his wife missing. They were estranged. He claimed that she came over to the house to talk. I think she had moved out. And I'm looking for my notes here, but I know I have them. And here they are. He said he woke up in the morning and she was gone, which is one of the theories that Mr. Pahl has expressed to law enforcement, that he came out of his appointment and Ms. Pavlon's was simply gone. Yet her purse, phone, and jacket were still at the house in the Bucky decision, similar to what we have in this case. Officers noted some handprints in the bed of the truck that Mr. Bucky owned, and had a cadaver dog come out and hit on that truck. And that's exactly what was ruled admissible. The really important thing is that in Bucky, the whole second half of the decision talks about this corroboration that the defense is trying to get you to require here, and rejected it. That was exactly the defense in Bucky is, hey, we can't trust this. We need independent corroboration. And the Court of Appeals said no. As long as the court goes through the entire proper analysis, relies on the science, believes that the science is appropriately applied, and that this would be helpful testimony to the jury, it is admissible. So we absolutely rely on the Bucky decision, Your Honor.
All right. So here's what's going on here. The analysis that I use isn't one about whether or not the dog's actions are an out-of-court statement used for, proffered for the truth of the matter asserted. We have a witness here. We have Mr. Willis, and I'm going to use the term investigator. He's a law enforcement officer, but was working in his capacity, I think, as a private citizen assisting law enforcement in this case, whether I call him Mr. or investigator. Mr. Willis set out his qualifications in this hearing. And the testimony in this case is not the dog said there was a dead body in the back of the truck. The testimony that I heard from Mr. Willis is, here's the training that this dog has. Here are some of the entries into the training log for the year immediately before this incident. Not all of them, but we started at page 87. We didn't get 1 through 86. We started at page 87. And I'll be honest, I was thinking to myself, why is Ms. Opper, going through every single one of these? But understanding what the attack is on it, I understand why she did that. But so we have this witness who's not going to say, we don't have a dog, coming and doing anything here. We have the trainer saying, here's what my dog did on the date in question. Here's the training that my dog received. Here's verified proof of that training. Here's a demonstration that we set up blinds, that we used residuals, that we used actual organs for training. And so what we have is Mr. Willis is going to come in and say, here's what I saw on the date of the incident. My dog, I forget the term he used, the TFAs, the training alerts that the dog did by sitting. He would testify that based on his training, the dog's training, his experience that he can verify in part through his training log, that this is what the dog's action meant. And the assertion essentially is that the dog's actions indicated that there had been a body, a cadaver, in that location, in that vehicle, or on that part of the vehicle, or somewhere around that vehicle. We have Mr. Potter's testimony, and Mr. Potter's got probably more experience than, certainly more experience, I think by age in any event, than Mr. Willis in terms of training dogs. And Mr. Potter has trained military dogs. He's taught people how to train dogs. He's trained trainers who are going to handle dogs. And although courts don't declare persons experts in any area, that's a determination, a factual determination for really jurors to make. He has an amount of expertise in training dogs, but not specifically as to cadaver dogs. But he does have this experience. He started training in '93, patrol dogs, drug detection, tracking dogs, looking for bombs, looking for drugs. And he's got a substantial amount of experience, and he looked at the training records, and I'm going to summarize what he said. Hey, this training is legit, right? In all respects. Everything that Willis did is done properly. Everything that Willis did, confirms what he's done. In essence, although he isn't specific, has never worked with cadaver dogs, he's worked with scent dogs and training them to detect things. And he said, yeah, this is all right. This is everything that's done. And he, in essence, echoed when asked about cueing. And cueing is something that where a handler's actions will let a dog, will create a reaction in a dog, right? I don't know if any of you have dogs out there. I know some of you have dogs out there, but dogs are very much attuned. The reason I think people, I'm not an expert in dogs, but the reason that people use dogs for detection, there's other animals that have a great sense of scent, but dogs are those animals that have been raised with people for a long time, and our actions and the dog's actions cue off each other, right? And a dog will look at the trainer, the handler, the owner, and respond to slight cues. And Mr. Potter said, yeah, this training is legit. I mean, again, my words, but his, I think, opinion. He believes that the basic things that he saw, the training, the logs, all these things were appropriate. He believes that there's no indication of cueing in this case either. And so he disputes whether or not you can confirm that Raven the dog's action, the sitting, the TFA, which indicated by training that there had been a body, a cadaver in that vehicle, there's no way to confirm that. And he believes, as Mr. Potter said, that that indication would not be helpful to the jury. And I disagree with that in the most profoundest of senses, because we went through this training, and we just don't have Mr. Willis saying, yeah, I got a dog that can sniff bodies, and when my dog did this on this date, it meant there was a body in that car, and you better believe me because I know what I'm doing. That's not what we had. What we had really is what is contemplated by Daubert, really. What we had is, and I don't know whether we call the training of dogs, to sniff drugs, or the training of dogs to sniff cadavers, whether we call it a science, we call it a craft, we call it an art, a skill. But it is a process that's not commonly known to people. As I said, many people have dogs, but not all people are able to train dogs at the high level that Mr. Potter is, or that Mr. Willis is, right? And so we look at Daubert, and we look at what are the things that the court is supposed to look at. Whether the scientific, technical, or other specialized knowledge will assist the trier of fact to understand the evidence or determine a fact in issue. Now, what's the fact in issue here? Did Mr. Pahl have anything to do with the death of Ms. Pavlon, right? And, it's not like Raven the dog went out to, it's not Milwaukee County Stadium, whatever the baseball field is. I'm not a baseball fan. And at random sniffed a lot of cars or in trucks, and the gentleman who's in front of me was just some vehicle that dog alerted on. It's an individual who had a relationship with Ms. Pavlon's, a long-term relationship, who lived together with her or stayed together or at times. There's all this relationship that's part and parcel of this case. So the question is it a fact in issue as to whether or not there had been a body or might have been a body in that vehicle that belonged to Mr. Pahl. Well, yes, of course it is a fact and issue. And whether these, and I'm not going to call it scientific, I'll call it technical or specialized knowledge that Mr. Willis has in interpreting that dog's actions, those will assist the trier of fact to determine a fact and issue. Second question, whether Mr. Willis is qualified as an expert by knowledge, skill, experience, trainer, and education to make a determination about what that dog's actions indicate. Well, he's demonstrated, and Mr. Potter's confirmed that his knowledge, experience, training, education, and skill are such that they're qualified to make that determination because he's an experienced dog trainer. Number three, whether the testimony is based upon sufficient facts or data. Well, I'll be honest with you, I have an error rate here. I have facts and data. I have, here's the number of tests that we did in the 1 year period, pages 87 to 92, whatever it is. Here's what we did in that 1 year period before, and that doesn't count all the tests. We had blind tests, we had tests using human flesh, bones, etc., human material, tissue, and we had tests that use as well a specimen that's, I don't want to use the word specimen, but an article that had been infused with the odor of the human tissue, right? So we have that data recorded. We have a rate of error recorded. We have certifications demonstrated, tests over certain periods of time that demonstrate what that information is. Fourth, whether the testimony is a product of reliable principles and methods. Again, Mr. Potter said these are reliable principles and methods in terms of training a dog to detect a scent, some scent. And then whether the witness has applied the principles and methods reliably to the facts of the case. So again, we have Mr. Willis saying that when that dog smelled or made an indication, a TFA, that here's what it means. It means that at some time there had been a cadaver, a dead body, in the back of that vehicle. So, you know, this meets this test, and I think the Bucky case is right on this fact situation. We've vetted Mr. Willis. Does he know what he's doing? Can he interpret what it means when the dog did this? It's not a question of what the dog said or didn't say. This dog took an action, and we have an individual who can reliably report to the finder of fact, the jury in this case, that when that dog sat down at the back part of that vehicle, of that truck, that was an indication that there had been a cadaver in that vehicle. And given the facts of this case, of course, you know, the relationship between Ms. Pavlon's and Mr. Pahl, the circumstances of her disappearance, the time frame that we're in, the fact that this was his vehicle, not just any vehicle found in a parking lot, those are things, looking at the facts of the case, that demonstrate that the principles and methods used by Mr. Willis, and you know, it's a question of credibility. Are they going to believe him? Are they going to believe that he trained this dog enough? Are they going to believe that this dog knew what it was doing, that this dog was trained sufficiently to do what was expected of it, and whether or not on the date in question, under the facts of that day, the way the search was conducted, whether those results were reliable and make a difference in this case. So I will deny the motion to exclude the evidence of a cadaver dog in this case. And the request was in the alternative to conduct a Daubert hearing, and we just did that. So the results and actions of the dog and the testimony of Mr. Willis will be admissible. Obviously, if the defense wishes to bring Mr. Potter back and have him testify as well about what he believes were inadequacies, that's their right to do that. That would be appropriate and relevant given what I've heard today as well. But I'll deny that motion at this time. All right, it's 3 o'clock. Let's take a short break for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back, and then we will continue with the motion concerning statements. Okay? How many witnesses, ma'am?
Just one.
You're good, Ms. Gordon?
Yes.
Okay, all right, very good. 10 minutes. Okay, we're back in session now, and we had dealt with the motion to exclude the cadaver dog evidence. That's document 101. And then we have the motion to exclude statements. I'm just trying to make sure I have which document that would be. Document
92?
92, the motion to suppress in custody statement. And do you intend on using the statements that are referenced in your case?
Yes, I have an audio recording that we'll listen to. It's in total, it's 20 minutes long, but there's 11 minutes of back and forth. So we will listen to the 11 minutes.
Okay, all right, then let's go ahead. Now, before we do that, you indicate you have an audio recording. Is that exhibit
1?
Exhibit 1, okay, and that's included in the flash drive that was given to my clerk, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so as good as our court reporter is, it's very difficult when I'm not able to tell people to stop or repeat things for her to try to transcribe what's said in an audio recording. Do you have any objection, since you're going to introduce the recording itself, to not having her transcribe the contents?
No, Judge.
All right, Mr. Jensen?
I don't object.
Okay,
However, I wish they wouldn't have changed that rule requiring the reporter to record the recordings, because it makes review a lot easier.
and easier for you, but harder for my court reporter, because it's impossible. She'd have to sit down and stop and play and stop and play it again. She's not able to transcribe it now today if we listen to it.
I understand.
Right.
I didn't object. I don't object.
All right. You know, I'm just touchy about people attacking court reporters, right? All right. Okay, let's go ahead.
Thank you. The state will call Detective Fredericks.
All right, sir, come up to the witness stand, remain standing, and raise your right hand to be sworn in, please.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. All right, have a seat, sir, and then give us your first and last name and spell both, please.
Brian, B-R-I-A-N, Fredericks, F-R-E-D-E-R-I-C-K-S.
All right, go ahead, ma'am.
Detective Fredericks, where are you employed?
The Waukesha County Sheriff.
And how long have you been employed there?
This is my 16th year.
And is that the totality of your law enforcement experience?
No, in total, I have just over 29 years.
Okay. And were you working for the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department in September of 2022 and 2023?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And during that time, were you assigned to investigate a body that was located in your jurisdiction?
Yes, I was.
What was your role in that investigation?
I was one of 2 detectives that was assigned to conduct the investigation itself.
Okay. And from September of 2022 through September of 2023, did you and Detective Plennis and other members of the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department continue to investigate the circumstances around that body being located?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And through your investigation, did you develop a suspect of who you believed may have been involved in the death of what was later identified as Stephanie Pavlon?
Yes, we were.
Okay. Now, did there come a time where you determined there would be an arrest made?
Yes.
Okay. And who was it that your department was going to be arresting in relation to this homicide?
The defendant, Matthew Pahl.
Okay. Do you see Mr. Pahl in court here today?
I do.
Can you please identify him by where he's seated and items of clothing he's wearing?
He's seated next to defense attorneys in all orange.
Okay. May the record reflect identification of the defendant?
All right, any comment, Mr. Jensen?
No.
All right, go ahead.
Okay. And on September 18th of 2023, was that when you and your partner, Detective Plennis, determined that you would seek out Mr. Pahl to make an arrest in this case?
That's correct.
And had you and other members of your department previously had contact with Mr. Pahl?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Did you know where Mr. Pahl lived?
Yes.
Okay. Where was he living at the time?
An apartment complex on Delafield Street in the city of Waukesha.
Okay. And where did you believe you would find Mr. Pahl on September 18th of 2023?
Coming or going from his apartment complex.
Okay. And so what did you and Detective Plennis do?
We sat up in a position of surveillance to monitor the entrance that we believed he would be exiting from.
Okay. And were you in a squad?
We were in an unmarked vehicle.
Prior to September 18th of 2023, had you actually interviewed Mr. Pahl?
Yes.
Okay. And during that interview, he had then read his Miranda warnings and agreed to speak with you and another detective?
Correct.
Okay. On this occasion, when you made contact with Mr. Pahl on September 18th, was there any sort of plan about if you were going to interview Mr. Pahl?
No.
Why was there wasn't a plan, or you were not going to interview him?
We were not going to interview.
Okay. Why was that?
Because he had already retained counsel.
Okay. And so on September 18th of 2023, about what time were you and Detective Plennis conducting surveillance to try and locate Mr. Pahl?
I think we got into the area in approximately 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe a little bit earlier.
Okay. And do you know how long you had to wait before you saw Mr. Pahl exit the residence?
It was the majority of the day. I feel like it was towards the very end of the day, actually.
Okay. And did you have a signed arrest warrant to take Mr. Pahl into custody?
Yes,
Did you also have a search warrant for his residence for that day?
we did.
Okay. And what happened when you and Detective Plennis were sitting in the car and observed Mr. Pahl exit the residence?
We approached him, and Detective Plennis was driving. I was on the passenger side. And when we pulled up, I was closest to where Mr. Pahl was, and identified ourselves. He was aware for sure of who I was, and told him that he was under arrest.
By that point, you had met Mr. Pahl on a number of occasions?
Yes.
Okay. And were you and Detective Plennis using a recording device to record your interaction with Mr. Pahl that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Why did you do that?
In the event that any excited utterances or statements like that were made.
Okay. And did you start that recording before you and Detective Plennis even got out of the vehicle?
I think it was about the same time that I was coming out of the car that the recording was started.
Okay. And do you recall if you were holding that recording device or Detective Plennis, or it was somewhere in the vehicle?
I don't recall.
Okay. Have you had a chance to listen to that recording since that date?
Yes.
Okay. I am going, when you listened to that recording, did you believe it was a true and accurate depiction of the recording you made with Mr. Pahl?
Yes.
Okay. I am going to play, I would move to admit exhibit number 1, and I would move admission.
Any comment or statement at this time?
No.
Any objection?
No.
Okay, then number 1 will be admitted.
so
Again, for purposes of this hearing.
We will start at the beginning, and I will let the court know if and when that recording is stopped.
Traffic. Pahl, we got him.
Can I at least lock my bike up? Chain lock up on my bike?
Lock it up.
I don't know if I locked it up. What are you doing? Circling the parking lot, waiting for me to come out?
Circling the parking lot? That kind of time.
How the hell could I just come out? I just came out. It just came out.
Yeah. Get lucky.
Got lucky.
Got lucky, you got unlucky.
I'm not worried about anything. I'm absolutely worried about nothing.
Matt, your date of birth was 6/11/68, right?
Yep. You got faith on your side, and you know you didn't do it.
Detective, by this point, is Mr. Pahl in handcuffs?
Yes,
And is he being, I guess, placed in the back of your unmarked vehicle?
correct.
Okay. What are you doing while he's in the back of your unmarked vehicle? What are you waiting for?
We were waiting for a marked squad to show up that had a cage to transport Mr. Pahl.
Okay. And throughout your interaction with Mr. Pahl, you kept that recording going?
That is correct.
Why did you do that?
Again, just to memorialize the event, and if there's any statements made that would be helpful.
Okay, so we'll start again at 120. Sorry, 128.
You guys are gonna have to.
Hey, it's fine.
What are you doing?
Okay.
You're gonna have to say.
Is that what you think?
That's what I know.
Okay.
I know.
Okay. Turn. In case I have a second lock these so they don't tighten up on you, can you swing your legs? There you go. And that one. You're good.
I mean, honestly, it wouldn't be nothing new. It wouldn't be nothing new. I got charged. The DA's office charged me for beating up that guy, breaking the window. That never happened.
Okay.
Just like in the interview when I was in with you,
Yeah.
they fabricated a witness at the school with my daughter spanking, which was absolute bullshit. So,
Yeah.
you know, this is just silly. I just don't know how you go by just because of what the Pavlons say or because of what the Pavlon family says. You know, it's
Got so very little to do with that, man.
oh, it's got everything to do with that because I know for a fact what I did and what I didn't do.
Gotcha.
Okay, you're not going to do inception on me by planting thoughts in my head with things I didn't do.
You think we're
I'm
planting
not.
thoughts on your head?
I'm not trying to be addicted. I'm just
just
telling you.
talking, it's all
I'm
good.
just telling you. I read the paper.
Yeah.
I understand that DOJ's in Illinois, DOJ's in Michigan, rounding up a lot of detectives for putting people away on fabricating shit. Okay, that's all over the place.
I'm not worried.
That's all over the place.
I'm not worried about that.
Well, I don't know what I'm being arrested for.
Well,
what
explain all that.
What could I possibly be arrested for? I didn't do anything.
I understand what you're saying, and I'm not worried about DOJ doing any kind of roundups. Got nothing to do with me.
Oh, I think eventually DOJ is going to be in this state. I mean, I think eventually.
It's possible.
I think eventually.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I'm not worried about it personally.
I mean, I'm just telling you what's going on.
Line 204 being routed
This shit is real. I mean, it was just on the news this weekend with the Innocence Project about how many people are getting charged and convicted for shit they don't do.
Gotcha.
You think the way I'm here? Do I act like I'm guilty?
People act different ways, different
Well,
times.
I know that.
Like,
Trust me, I know that.
yeah,
And detectives do different things different ways too.
that's
you know?
fair. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not worried about DOJ
But
roundups.
come on, man. I mean, honestly, no, I'm not. I'm just telling you that's what's going on.
No,
I mean,
I don't doubt it.
it's a reality.
I've seen it. I hear what you're saying.
I mean, honestly, heart to heart, whatever that saying is, I'm a little bit shocked. I thought you guys were gonna do a little bit better than this.
Oh, really?
Then
We
just-
disappoint you?
No, they just put the blame game on somebody.
No.
I thought you would actually be able to, if you guys are supposed to do it, you're supposed to follow the evidence.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else upstairs that needs to be, anyone in the house? that
No,
needs to-
no, nobody's up
When
there.
the door's open, you lock.
No, I did. I believe I did lock it. I just got confused with my lock over
okay.
over there, my bike.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure I locked my door before
we'll make
I
sure
left.
it's locked. We'll get that taken care of. We'll make sure everything's secured before we leave, okay?
Well, you don't got a warrant to go in there.
I will, no, he said there's nobody else. All right?
Do you have my keys? I mean, I know you took my yellow pieces of paper out of my wallet last time.
Yellow piece.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a lot of
It's
stuff.
on camera. I mean, you took my yellow pieces of paper in that little room that were in my wallet.
Yeah.
And that wasn't in the search warrant.
Did you, grab that, or?
No, I'm
I'm drawing a blank on what that would be.
that was personal information that belonged to me.
There was a number of people in and out of there that day, right? Like there was
Come
probably
on.
10 detectives. in
You
there.
hand me my wallet and the papers were gone. You took them out.
Again, the yellow paper. I don't know what was on it off the top of my head, but
Well, it would have to be on the search warrant if you take it.
throw these in a bag.
Yeah, I'm putting your stuff in a bag, all right, bud? Or an envelope?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I figured it would be some show around the year. I figured you'd have to try to come up with something to justify what you did.
What we did?
By coming here and arrested somebody for what? For what?
We went through all that.
I'm shocked, but yet I'm not with Waukesha County
Yeah.
fabricating stuff.
I'm surprised you stayed living in the county with all these beefs you've had here.
Well, I got kind of stuck here.
Yeah.
Basically helping her, helping her stay alive for so many freaking years,
Yeah.
And then now I'm getting accused. I assume this is what it is. Now I'm getting accused for something I absolutely did not do.
Okay.
All I can say is, I'd rather stand with God and be judged by the people than stand with the people and be judged by God, because, on review day up there, you guys better have the answers, man.
Seems fair.
You better have the answers.
I feel pretty good, man. I sleep at night.
I hope so. I
you know
do
what
too.
So
I do too. I do too. I do too.
That's good.
I can't get a drink out of my bottle. I knew as soon as I looked over here. I knew it was the police. I knew you guys were the police. Yeah.
No, No.
The way you pulled in here, good thing I wasn't on my bike. It might have hit me.
Hello, Puerto Rico.
Clear citation. Truck CBSD for assignment. I think it's the same call 23 though.
I got a fucked up shoulder.
It's on, it's recording.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. Just leave that going.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't care if you want to, however you want to.
Was that the deputy that came in a marked squad to take custody of Mr. Pahl?
That is correct.
And did you have an opportunity to review the entire remaining about 9 minutes of this audio?
I believe I did, yes.
Okay. And does anyone ask Mr. Pahl any other, is there any other conversation with the deputy and Mr. Pahl in that 9 minutes?
No.
Okay. And you, in fact, then provide the recording device, you or Detective Plennis, to that deputy to keep in the squad with her while she continues to transport Mr. Pahl?
That's correct.
Okay. And in those 11 minutes and 17 seconds that you interacted with Mr. Pahl, did you ask him any questions related to the investigation?
I did not.
Did you have just a little bit of back and forth conversation with Mr. Pahl?
I would describe it as small talk, yes.
Okay. And at one point, he said something about maybe your department disappointing him, and you said, "Oh, really? Did we disappoint you?" Right?
I did.
Did Mr. Pahl answer in any way related to this investigation?
Not really, no.
Okay. What day was Miss Pavlon's body found out in the woods near Delafield?
September 9th of 2022.
And on September 18th of 2023 is when you and Detective Plennis made this recording?
Correct.
Okay, and so it had been just over a year from the time the body was located?
That is correct.
Okay, and that's what Mr. Pahl was referencing in, I knew there'd be a showing at about a year?
Yes.
Okay. Throughout those 11 minutes, did you make any attempt to ask Mr. Pahl any questions?
No.
Why didn't you read him his Miranda warnings?
Because we were not in a position that we were going to begin any type of interrogation, and specifically in this, we were not planning on an interrogation.
But you would agree Mr. Pahl was in custody at this time?
I would, yes.
I don't have anything else for this witness.
Mr. Jensen?
No, I have no cross because we heard it all on the video, on the audio recording.
Okay.
State has no other witnesses.
All right,
State would move Exhibit 1 if it wasn't already into
All
evidence.
right, no other witnesses, any testimony from anyone?
No.
Okay. I don't have any questions now. Some of the stuff during the recording was not really clear, but I'll listen. If I think I have other questions, we'll have them come back up.
Okay.
You can have a seat, sir. Okay. All right. All right, what do you want to tell me, ma'am?
Judge, I'm asking that you deny the defendant's motion. I concede that the defendant was in custody, but I think it's very clear from listening to the audio recording that there was no questions asked of Mr. Pahl. In fact, Mr. Pahl is kind of challenging the law enforcement officers about why they're there, what they're there doing, that there's some type of conspiracy. And the only thing even that comes close to a question is, did we disappoint you, in which Mr. Pahl does not respond in any way related to this investigation. He kind of mumbles and moves on. The definition of interrogation is something that is, interrogation or the functional equivalent is something that's reasonably likely to elicit an incriminating response. I don't think any of Detective Frederick's statements to Mr. Pahl were likely to elicit an incriminating response. And to be frank, the defendant's statements that the defense really seeks to be suppressed were, I thought you had to follow the evidence, and I figured there'd be some show around the year. Neither of those statements were made in response to a question, and all of his statements were spontaneous. So I don't believe that there's been a Miranda violation here, and I'm asking that you deny the motion.
Mr. Jensen.
Well, Your Honor, I think you should listen to it again, because when I listened to it, it definitely seemed that those comments by Mr. Pahl were in response to questions by the detective. And just to make...
Let's play those points in the tape. Tell us what point, what time.
Oh, I don't have that exactly right in front of me. I can probably find it.
No. So let's go back then. You have, I'm going to ask you to play again. The point with at 7 minutes and 40 seconds into the tape, or into the recording. Before you do that, give me 1 second. I want to look at a document here for unrelated to this case.
What?
Okay.
Judge, if the court, I found the exact part where Detective Frederick says, did we disappoint you? If that's what the court's interested in, I
But
can...
I want you to play it like right before that then.
Okay, so we
what
should...
What Mr. Pahl said and then what Detective Frederick said.
Okay. So if we could start at 4:34. Sure, that's fine. So we're going to start at 4:32.
You a little bit better than this.
Oh, really?
Then
We
just-
disappoint you?
No, they just put the blame game on somebody.
Oh.
I thought you would actually be able to, you know, like you guys are supposed to do it. You're supposed to follow the evidence.
Is there anybody else upstairs that needs to be, anyone in the house?
No, nobody's up there.
The door's open, you lock.
No, I believe I did lock it. I just got confused with my lock over over there, my bike.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure I locked my door before I...
we'll make sure it's locked. We'll get that taken care of. We'll make sure everything's secured before we leave, okay?
Okay. Then anything else from the state?
I guess I just want to clarify, that's the only question that they're in response that they're challenging?
Well,
You tell me, sir, if there's any other part you think I should listen
Well,
to again, I'll be happy to do that.
He also says the part after that about locking the toilet. He said, you know, they're talking about, he said, you can't go in there without a warrant.
Right.
You know.
Concerning the Miranda issue, it's just I thought you had to follow the evidence, and I thought there'd be some show because it's been a year.
So the statement regarding, I thought there'd be some show around a year, does not happen until 7:35 in the recording.
If you play that again.
Sure, so let's start it at,
I
we
thought I
can
had
start around,
recorded at about 7:40.
yeah, if we could start it around sometime after 7:30.
And tell us when you're gonna start.
Sure. Sure, we'll start it at 7:33.
Yeah, I figured there'd be some show around the year. I figured you'd have to try to come up with something to justify what you did.
What we did?
You wanted it played a little bit before that?
It started when Paul began his answer. I want to see what the question was.
So,
So you want it started before he started talking at about
Yes.
7:35?
Correct.
All right, that's fine. Play it a little bit before that.
so can we start
How
at,
about like at about,
we could start it at, there's no talking between 6:58 and 7:35.
all right, okay. So let's, just so we know for sure, start it at 7:30.
That's fine, you can, yeah. So we're starting at 7:29.
Okay.
Yeah, I figured there'd be some show around the year. I figured you'd have to try to come up with something to justify what you did.
What we did?
By coming here and arresting somebody for what? For what?
We went through all that.
Stop it at 8:09.
So as I understood it, the testimony, or the statement was, Mr. Pahl, I'm going to paraphrase, said something to the effect that I figured you'd have to come up with something for what you did after a year. And then the detective said, what we did? Not so much a question as a response to, we did, okay. Anything else you want me to get?
That's it.
Okay, all right. Any other comment then from the state?
Just judge that between 7 minutes and 7:35, when Mr. Pahl makes that statement, there's no conversation. I think it's clear that making some show around the year is not directly following the conversation earlier about some disappointment. He's not making that statement in response to the question, to any question. It's a spontaneous statement made by himself.
All right. Anything else, Mr. Jensen?
No.
All right, so, and you seek to suppress those statements made in custody to him on that date, which was the 18th of September 2023, correct?
Correct.
All right, so obviously there was custody, right? There's no question about that. The testimony of Officer Frederick was that they were going to go and take him into custody, that Mr. Pahl had already invoked his right to have an attorney, and that it was clear to me that the detective knew that there wasn't going to be questioning because that invocation. If there's custody and there's questioning and interrogation, or that old term, the functional equivalent of it, like a police officer saying, don't answer any questions, just let me tell you what we have, or something along those lines. That wasn't the case here. That wasn't the case here. Mr. Pahl was chatty. The detectives were taking him into custody. They restrained him immediately. There's no question but that there was custody. And now the next question that we have to look at, absent a reading of the Miranda rights and notifying him his right to remain silent, to have an attorney, et cetera, to get an attorney to represent him, and so on, what we commonly call the Miranda rights. They didn't advise him of those. Their intent was, as stated by Detective Frederick, to take him into custody, to get a squad with a cage in it, a marked squad probably, but maybe not, but a squad with a cage in it to come and pick him up. Mr. Pahl, throughout the course of those approximately 11 and a quarter minutes that were recorded, initiated comments. He's the one who initiated. Several times I heard the officer say, okay, as just acknowledging that he said something, okay. And just acknowledging as well some other actions that the officers were going to take, locking the door, letting him lock his bike, or acknowledging the door was locked. Mr. Pahl accusing officers of fabricating stuff. And it was at that point when he started talking about that 8:20, and about at 8:50 the officers responded, okay. And then Mr. Pahl continued talking about something being held for something he did not do. He knew it was police at 10 minutes. At 10:36 he continued talking. At 11:17 was a stop, no other conversation. Officer Frederick said he did not ask questions about the investigation, and I agree he did not. He did make a response about sort of parroting what we did after they were accused of doing something. There wasn't any direct questioning. There wasn't anything that I would understand to be the functional equivalent of questioning, something said to initiate Mr. Pahl's conversation about the crime or the allegations against him. What I heard was officers responding to him, acknowledging his statements, wondering what we did, after being accused of doing things. So I'm going to find that the officers did not question him. They did nothing to initiate the conversation with him in regards to talking about the alleged offense. They did nothing that would be considered the functional equivalent of questioning. So I'll find that those statements made by Mr. Pahl were voluntary statements initiated by himself, not in response to questioning by law enforcement officers, and I'll find them to be admissible at the time of trial in the state's case in chief. So I think I've covered, that's document 92, the motion to suppress that in custody statement. The remaining motions concern other acts and the admission of evidence in the course of the trial that are going to take some time, I believe. And it's almost 4 o'clock now. I don't think we need testimony from other individuals, do we, from the state's perspective?
No, Judge, those are the two motions that we believe would require testimony.
All right, and do you agree with me, Mr. Jensen? We don't have any other testimony that's needed?
Yes, however, in my response, I pointed out that there are two facets to this issue. One is it truly admissible other acts evidence? And second of all, how the state intends to present the
No, I
evidence.
understand that.
Yeah.
That's a different issue, and
Right.
I don't know. I mean, the witnesses can leave if they wish. I'm sure they're not going to, but they're free to leave if they wish. So, yeah, as I read the documents, there's those two issues. There's the evidence that the state seeks to introduce, not as other acts, but as part of, I think the term, the panorama of the offense, right? And then there's those things that are clearly other acts related to Ms., I think her name was Bean, and other statements. The question that I have is the same question that I think Mr. Jensen has. Regardless of whether I believe these things are going to be admissible, how does the state intend to admit to what I perceive in some of the cases to be hearsay issues? Now, for example, there are conversations between Mr. Pahl, I think text conversations between him and a woman or women in the Philippines. And whereas some of those texts, if it's demonstrated that they're from him, would be admissible. I'm not making any final decision here, but then responses from people in the Philippines on their face would be inadmissible. So let's assume, for the sake of argument, there's a series of texts between Mr. Pahl and somebody in the Philippines. What part of that, Mr. Gordon, would you be attempting to admit?
So the text message specific to the Philippines is actually part of our motion in limine, that not part of our other acts.
Okay.
But the same would go for the emails between Mr. Pahl and Ms. Pavlon's or text messages. The state's assertion is that the defendant's side of the conversation is not hearsay and is admissible. And so we would be seeking to admit the other side of the conversation for context and to allow a greater understanding of the conversation, not necessarily for the truth of the matter asserted, particularly as it relates to the conversations in the Philippines. We're most interested in Mr. Pahl's comments and the statements that he makes, and kind of what the woman says to him in response is not of consequence, except that it allows the jury to have some context and understanding of what the conversation is or is about and what Mr. Pahl is talking about.
I think that's going to take some time for us to take a good close look at all of those statements. I'm not going to try, I mean, it's going to take a couple hours for us to take care of that. And I don't intend to dive into that today. I think we've had a long day, at least my staff has had, we've had other things as well. And what I'd like to do is, we have our trial date set and we've got limited time.
Would the court consider hearing the jury view motion today?
I'll talk about the jury view, sure. Is there opposition to the jury view?
No.
Okay. Now, let me do this. Jury views can be difficult, right? We have this in April. I am not familiar with I know roughly where the area is behind the orthopedic hospital. What's that ground like? Is it wet? Is it, and the concern that I have in jury views, the jury views that I've had been, for example, although not my case, on the parade case, the parties brought in a motor vehicle, and the jurors were able to see that in a controlled environment. I had a civil case where we looked at a tunnel boring machine, and that was brought on the flatbed of a semi-truck to the roundabout where we were able to troop out there. Jury views are part of the jury trial. Jury views mean that anybody in the world could go out there when we're there, right? Especially when we're out in public, right? The media
Funny
included.
story about that. I'll tell you later.
I'm sure. What's the terrain like? Is it wet? Is it soggy? Are we going to have to get, we're going to have two alternates? Are we going to have to get our own mud boots and 14 pairs of mud boots for jurors? I don't know. I'm not intimate with the area. And so you want a jury view. The defense is not opposing the jury view. My job is to logistically set up the jury view and bring my staff with me, and depending on what we need to do, I need the state then, we know that there's no opposition to the jury view, give me the logistics. How are we gonna provide for people? What's the terrain gonna be like? Do we have to spray for mosquitoes ahead of time? I mean, it's
Sure.
in the woods, it's in April.
Sure. If I could speak to that, it was my motion, Your Honor, and I am familiar with this area. I've been out there a couple of times. It could be wet. It definitely could be, depending on the weather, of course. My solution to the footwear would be to give the jurors enough notice and say, hey, on Wednesday, please bring rain boots. We're going to be going out there, and have them supply their own.
I was jesting about
Okay, well, I think it's a legitimate thing. I do. My proposal would be, yes, it's part of the jury. It still has to be held open to the public, but we would still ask the sheriff's department to provide some security in the area so that the jury isn't interfered with or disrupted in any way. So my request, again, was that on a date to be determined, we would have a bus transport the jury to the location. My request was that prior to the jury's arrival, the sheriff's department would be on scene. They would have the area generally marked off.
Let me do this, and I apologize for interrupting you, but there's not an opposition to the jury view.
There's not an opposition, is my understanding.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's not an opposition, and there's a lot of logistical things that, we have Mr. Pahl in custody, how are we gonna handle that? Is there expected that anything would be said at the time of the jury view? Who should say it, right? And if anybody's gonna say anything, my very excellent court reporter is gonna have to be there with a machine as well. And so, again, I'm not familiar with the terrain. I don't know how far off the road it is. I think that because there isn't an opposition, I'm gonna ask you folks to put your heads together to see if we can come up with a plan.
Okay.
Okay? And then, subject to my approval and the approval of the sheriff's department, who's gonna have to provide for the logistics, right?
Yes.
Then let me know what you folks come up with, what you want, what you're concerned about, and what is not agreed upon, and I'll do whatever I have to do if there's a disagreement. But again, I haven't been there, I don't know it, I'm not about to go either, and I presume Mr. Jensen or Mr. Mogren, you have been or might have been there or have some familiarity perhaps. You folks will know better than I do what has to happen there and what you want of the jury. You want just to look at the area? You want them to, and you're talking about the place where the body was found? You want us to go there and within an arm's length from that? Do you want me to parade the jurors one by one? Do you want them to look at mass? A lot of questions that I think you folks could probably talk about and get your heads together on and present it to me. But that's what I'm going to ask you to do at this point. I'm inclined to grant it since there's no opposition, but at the same time, I want to make sure that it's meaningful and not that we can logistically do what we need to do. Okay?
Okay.
All right? So that's been taken care of, and now we have the motions in limine and the other acts, which seem to be what's left. I think, you agree with that, Ms. Gordon?
Yes.
You agree with that, Mr. Jensen?
Yes.
And how about this Friday? Or the Friday after on the 21st? What?
This Friday would be.
Hang on a second. Yeah. Until 2:30? Because we have that thing with, what's his name? Sakua. All right, this Friday or the Friday next?
State would prefer this Friday.
Yeah, I can't do Friday the 21st.
Cannot do the
Cannot,
21st.
cannot do it.
Are you available this Friday?
Well, I will be here at 10 o'clock on another case, so,
Afternoon.
oh, then I can't do it. No, I have an appointment in the afternoon.
Okay. But you're not available the 21st?
No.
Okay, let me look at my schedule. Let me consult with my clerk. Pardon? Too close. When do we start this? The 8th? No, we need, it's too close. Oh, good. When? What day? And the 28th, I've got pre-trials. In the afternoon. Check, we're off the record just for scheduling purposes. Check your availability in the afternoon of the 27th.
Date's free.
I have a 1:30 status call with Judge Edelman, but I'm wide open after that.
We've got Martha Brown. What? Say it again. No trial date? So on the, how about the 24th in the afternoon, Monday afternoon, the 24th?
I have a contest hearing in front of Judge Pizzo.
In front of Judge Pizzo?
Yes.
A family matter?
Family matter, yes.
Okay.
I mean, if you could help me with that.
Is that all afternoon?
It's set for all afternoon.
It's a initial, is it a post-judgment?
It's a contested hearing on a post-judgment. My client just yesterday directed me to file a motion to adjourn. I don't know what the response will be, but
Okay. Is the state available the afternoon of the 24th?
Yes.
Looks like I'll be helping you and your client on the 24th. I'll talk to Judge Pizzo. I'll tentatively set this to be continued the afternoon of the 24th at 1:30. Okay?
Judge, I just let you know, I'll probably be in a trial. It's fine. Mr. Jensen can handle it, but I probably won't be here.
Okay, all right. So, but Mr. Jensen was originally going to handle all the motions.
Right.
Okay. You're okay with that, Mr. Jensen, right?
yes.
Okay, I will, when you write your letter to Judge Pizzo, you can tell them that Judge Ramirez respectfully requests the adjournment of that matter, given the nature of this matter, and I'll also personally talk to him as
I
well.
appreciate that, thank you.
All right. All right, we're continued to that date. And if you can come up with some concepts and ideas about the jury view, let me know by that time as well, please, okay?
Okay, I know your staff is tired. Can I just ask one other quick question as we're gearing up for the trial about exhibits? And how we should organize them or number them, because our practice has been to have digital exhibits and not paper. Do you prefer paper?
So here's my concern when we talk about exhibits, okay? I understand your preference, and I'll be honest with you, you're usually pretty good about exhibits. The problem is that my concern is for the jurors, because if we have, for example, some judges say, okay, state, you get 1 through 100, and then you only have 33 exhibits, and then all of a sudden the defense has 101 to 200, jurors are going to wonder, well, what happened to 34 to 100? How many exhibits do you think you're going to have? Lots.
Probably 100 or more.
More.
Yeah. So Ms. Gussie, who does a lot of trials, has suggested if the court finds it helpful to use letters or alphabet for the
No,
defense?
that's worse.
That's worse,
She
okay.
may have done a lot of trials, but not more than me. Mr. Jensen?
There's a procedure I've used in other trials that I think could work here. If the state provides us with a USB with all of their exhibits on it, we can look at them ahead of time and I'll not have any objection to 80% of them. And then we don't have to do that whole identification, move to admit, they can just be admitted. You follow
Okay.
me? The
And
ones
so
I have
then-
an objection to, I will let them know.
Let's start by doing that right now, okay? Is that okay by the state?
So we can pre-mark the exhibits?
And put them all on a USB.
And put them on, you're gonna have them on a USB, right? And if he's got no objection, and so for example, if he knows that you're gonna have, I'll just say 1 to 100, and he's not gonna have any problem with that, we'll just start his at 101.
Except then if I decide not to use 22, is that going to annoy the court?
Whether it annoys me or not, my annoyance is of no consequence to anybody. But whether it makes sense to the jurors is a different question, right? The problem is not having 22 not produced. The problem is not having 33 to 100. And they're wondering what happened to scores of
Okay.
exhibits.
You could
That's
just
the
handle
problem.
that with an instruction, I think.
Pardon?
You could handle that with an
I could do that too, but let's do this. I'll allow you to pre-mark them at this time, but I want you to let them see what's going on, and then I'll determine what I'll do.
Okay, can we use the status on March 27th? We'll get them to him
Is that 24th?
on the 24th, and
Yes.
then we can talk about it on the 27th?
Right, our jury status is on the 27th.
Right, the 27th, right, okay. All right. Anything else from the state for now?
No.
Anything else, sir, Mr. Jensen?
No, thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you very much, everybody.